Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 923 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as Ukraine continues to pound Kursk, and Kursk is getting pounded up there on their tiny post. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as we've been getting some fairly interesting news over the past 48 hours, both good and bad. One of the best things that we've heard so far is that the Russian offensive in the Pokrovsk area appears to have slowed to a stop, heading towards the direction of Pokrovsk westwards over the past 48 hours, as Russia has started taking incredibly high casualties, and the Ukrainian defensives have started to solidify, or semi-solidify, around the area of Pokrovsk. We'll be giving a little bit more of an in-depth battle analysis of this area today, and also showing some of the footage that we got. At the exact same time, we also got a load of video and picture evidence from across the entirety of the front line, showing that heavy firefights and heavy battles have been occurring over the past 48 hours, and it appears that the Ukrainians have been inflicting incredibly high casualties onto the Russian forces within the Vovchansk front, around the area of the Severonsky Forest near Severodonetsk. We have also been able to see that the 4th Rubish Brigade engaged and knocked out some Russian forces around the area south of Klishkivka on the Chasiv Yar front, and we were also able to get a little bit of video and picture evidence from the area inside of Kursk. And we also got the really big announcement today that the Ukrainians plan on staying in Kursk indefinitely until the war is over. This is actually a fairly big piece of news, because up until this point, we weren't entirely sure if this was a semi-permanent front or a non-permanent front that would end up ceasing to exist by the end of this year. At least according to official governmental statements, the Ukrainians plan on staying here permanently well on into the future. At the exact same time, we also got to hear that inside of the Russian Federation, the purges have continued, as President Putin has ended up ordering the arrest, and this minor deputy, oh my lord, I forgot the name of the dumb guy's title, but it's like the assistant deputy of the Leningrad military district. He ended up getting purged today and arrested by the central Russian government on charges of corruption, much like every other person. We have also been able to see that the Kurikovo power plant has ended up getting pretty significantly hit. We were able to get a little bit further analysis and pictures of what was going on in that area. We also got to see further Belarusian military movement, a decent amount of interesting stuff that we really didn't know where to put down, but we also saw some things that ended up being a little bit questionable today. Like, for example, a large amount of resignations being forwarded to the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada by multiple members, and we also got to hear that apparently Dmytro Kuleba is now on the way to being removed, as we've heard that apparently he will now be fired by the Ukrainian central government. We're not entirely sure as to the reasoning, but it is still a very interesting move, considering that Kuleba has been one of the most steadfast members of the Ukrainian government, or at least the central government, that we've seen so far. We also got to hear of a couple of small incidents that we're going to be covering tonight. Apparently, some U.S. service members were beaten inside of Turkey over the weekend. 2 of them were by Turkish nationalists, and the 6th Fleet, which was in charge of these sailors that were beaten inside of Turkey, have ended up officially creating a response to the incident, and we'll be talking about that and also what's going on with Turkey here in a little bit. We also got to hear of some pretty wild news that the people who were in charge of responding to the flood that happened in North Korea, many of y'all will remember that flood because it was the one where Kim Jong-un almost got thrown off of a boat into a raging river. Apparently, a lot of those officials have been executed now, or they're in the process of being executed at this very moment. And we'll be talking a little bit.
Oh, damn. They got the boat driver, man. They took the boat driver out that nearly knocked him off.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, they didn't just get the boat driver that knocked Kim Jong-un off, they knocked him off. I mean, like, it was a knockoff circle, man. Like, they were just doing it to everyone.
Man, that's so nasty. That's North Korean style right there.
Man, but listen, man, if you don't drive the boat better, you're going to have to knock it off. Pun intended. But anyways, moving on from that and out of North Korea, we have absolutely loads of news to cover tonight. And these are just some of the main bulletin points of the things that we have to talk about tonight, pretty much union mandate, but we have so much to talk about. It's absolutely crazy. So, moving on, probably into one of the bigger pieces of news that we have tonight, the Russian advance around Pokrovsk does appear to have slowed, at least over the past 48 hours, which is giving us a fairly good sign. As you can see right here, the Pokrovsk front has ended up expanding to be incredibly large and all-consuming in this region of Donetsk, as this advance has ended up actually surprising a decent amount of Ukrainian commanders in this area, and they have stated that they have never seen a Russian advance like this before, and really, to be entirely honest, no one has seen a Russian advance like this before throughout the entire war. They were able to not only capture the town of Avdiivka down here, they were then able to push on all the way out of Avdiivka and pretty much just a few miles outside of Pokrovsk. This was a fairly concerning situation for a while, and we were seeing that the Russians were slowly making their way closer and closer to Pokrovsk, but over the past 48 hours, which I'll be showing y'all right here, it appears that their westward advances have largely stopped or completely ceased, and this is different than the 72-hour picture, and then even further back, as we could see that they were making some pretty steady and fast advances. This is the 22nd, about 11 days ago, and this is where they were able to get to on the 1st right here, which was around 72 hours ago. Since that 72-hour mark, they have made hardly any advances in the direction towards Pokrovsk, and it does appear that the front lines in this area are beginning to solidify or semi-solidify, and the Ukrainians may be able to effectively create some sort of a defensive position to be able to fight from this point. A very important thing going forward if they want to defend the major supply hub of Pokrovsk. Unlike other cities in the war so far, like Bakhmut and also like Avdiivka, where their strategic importance was not really that severe, it was the largest town within the area, Pokrovsk really is a strategically important town. Situated right onto the western side of the Donetsk region, this city has multiple highways passing through it. In fact, every single highway on the western area of Donetsk ends up converging inside the town of Pokrovsk, meaning that this is, by no stretch of the imagination, a major strategic and logistics hub for the Ukrainians to be able to control going on into the future. And that the Russians were to end up controlling this town, at least due to its road accesses, they would probably be able to spearhead further offensives to start pushing northwards through Donetsk and possibly attempt an encirclement of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, meaning that the defense of this area is largely vital. And not only that, it's not only vital for the Russians to try and take it, it's incredibly vital for the Ukrainians to try and hold it. Because much like the Russians would get a little bit of a logistical advantage or a forces advantage out of this area, the Ukrainians also do as well. And for this reason, the Ukrainians have to be able to hold it. And at least over the past 48 hours, it looks like they're starting to hold this quite well. And we are expecting that the Ukrainians probably will be able to eventually create some sort of a more solid defensive line, probably along the highway heading into Pokrovsk, and also the one further north of that, but we're not entirely sure at the moment, and we're still waiting and watching as this battle progresses day by day. But for now, it does seem that the Russians have largely been halted. And not only have they been halted, they've ended up taking some pretty significant losses over this short period of time. All the way down in the southern area of Marinka, we were able to see that the Ukrainian 46th Brigade was destroying a Russian forward element of the very southern flank of this offensive so far. And we can see right here, the 46th Brigade watching this large Russian column advancing through the field. We can see some tanks firing in support as they try and make their way through this wide opening. And we can now see Ukrainian artillery from the 46th Brigade being brought down on them, inflicting some light damage at this point. We haven't seen any vehicles knocked out yet, but I think that's about to change here really soon. Because we can see the Russians are desperately trying to speed forward, trying to avoid the artillery as best they can, but the artillery fire is getting more and more accurate and finally knocked out its first vehicle, a BMP-2 that was moving through the area of the west side of Marinka. We can then see the FPV drones coming in to carry on the job of the artillery, hitting other armored personnel carriers and knocking them out before they can get even further west inside of Marinka. We can see here...
It seems like they're just stepping on the accelerator. It seems like they're stepping on the accelerator and praying for the best at this point because they don't really seem to have a plan.
No, it doesn't really seem like they have a plan. The Russians never really have a plan, dude. It's like they just try their best and hope for the best most of the time. But we can see them now running through Marinka, getting bombarded on the way as Ukrainian FPV drones start making quick and easy work of the dismounted infantry. We can see here more Russian vehicles beginning to burn the field. That appears to be a shed. And it is actually a shed. It's an MTLB shed, interestingly enough. We can now see the drones targeting more of the MTLB sheds and knocking them out on the western side of Marinka and ensuring that this group cannot advance any farther. And dang, that thing's rolling. Dude, that thing was going. Oh, hit an anti-tank mine, and it's gone. Dang, that thing's charred up
Ah.
quite nice.
Oh, dear. Man, that was charred up for sure. It looks like everything else was as well.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, the Haitians are even jealous of that because not even barbecue can get a namesake that looks as good as that barbecue on that MTLB. But nevertheless, it does seem as though the Ukrainians are able to stop the Russian offensive near to its southern flank around Marinka, as we have heard that the major offensive up in the Pokrovsk direction is being supported by other secondary offensives that are happening in the area around Marinka and Staro-Mikhailivka as they attempt to advance towards Kursk and try and make sure that the Ukrainian highways heading into Pokrovsk from the south will also be cut off or under heavy fire as well from Russian artillery. While all of this has been going on, we also got to see that up in the northern area, the 47th Brigade has still ended up being a keystone part of the defensive element within this direction, and of course the coveted Bradley is a part of that element. We've gotten to see a few pictures of the Bradley again right here. We've seen a million of these pictures, but it is great to know that the Ukrainians are getting a large amount of mileage out of their Bradleys that they were provided, and from what we've been told, the Bradley is probably one of the most stellar and exemplary vehicles that has ever been provided by the West, even at least in Ukrainian service, outshining the Abrams, the Challenger 2s, and the Leopard 2s for the kind of versatility and also the wide variety of firepower that the vehicle possesses. It is probably one of the best vehicles that's ever been provided, and if I was to personally say, based off of the analysis that we get on this channel, that the West should gather around and send any other kind of equipment or any other kind of particular vehicle, I would say that the Bradley could probably never be given in a large enough number because the Ukrainians have shown that the Bradley truly is the most versatile and most effective vehicle that's ever been provided to them on the battlefield so far. While that's been going on, we also got to see that medics of the 58th Brigade are continuing on their support of the troops at the front that continue to get wounded and sometimes even near fatally wounded while serving in action for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. We were able to see pictures of some of the field staff that are operating in this field hospital, some of the ambulance drivers as well, some of the surgeons, and it seems as though they take a great deal of pride in their work, and they certainly should, as the work they do saves the lives of many Ukrainian soldiers and makes sure that either they get the choice to fight again another day, or they get to go home and sit out the rest of the war with their family if their injuries are too severe. But still, really nice to see that the Ukrainians are trying to hold down this front as best as possible, and we are expecting that as time goes forward, the Ukrainians probably will be able to solidify a defensive position around Pokrovsk, and it will most likely end up turning into an incredibly long, multi-month battle, and we'll have to then wait and see how do the Russians really fare. Do they end up having to give up on this battle entirely due to the massive losses that they're taking, which we've seen so far, or are they going to keep the meat grinder going until they can eventually and slowly take this town piece by piece in Pokrovsk? We won't really know for certain until the battle completely unfolds and then concludes. But moving on out of that area, we were able to hear some fairly interesting things inside of Russia, because while it does look like the Russians had a little bit of wind in their sails in Pokrovsk, it appears that the wind is being blasted right back out inside of Russia, as we were able to hear that up in the area of the town of Konakovo, where the largest gas power plant inside of central Russia is, the damage to the power plant does appear to be a decent amount. And we can see right there that there was some kind of a fire that destroyed a facility over here, and we can also see fire damage near to the base of the building over here as well. Once again, giving us a fairly clear indicator, at least at the moment, that the Russians may be having to consider shutting off this power plant completely, possibly due to the damage that was caused to the main generator halls, and because of that damage, they may not be able to efficiently produce power at this point, or they may be causing additional damage to the generator systems if they continue to run them in this kind of condition. But it is
So on the main generator hall, just one drone that hit the building, or was it actually several? Because I remember we saw the footage the other day, but we really couldn't tell exactly what was hit except for one little spot. So is it just the one spot on the side of the building?
From what we understand, it was near to one spot on the building. A heavy fire ensued afterwards, and it looks like it caused some pretty serious damage to the external part of the building and also inside of the generator halls as well. So I would have to say maybe a single drone, and also, Matthew, the audio issues are horrendous tonight. I don't know what it is, but like your thing is like absolutely going crazy. I don't even know how to explain it.
I'm not sure what to tell you about that.
I don't know. I would try a new mic. That would be my personal thing because I just never run into these problems with anyone else in calls ever, even when I'm streaming. So I don't know. That would be my take from it. But beyond that, it does look like the central power plant is running into some issues, and we're probably going to see that the Russians are faced with a pretty difficult decision. Either one will not be that good for them. Either they have to shut down the power plant and try and effect repairs, which could end up causing rolling blackouts throughout the area of central Russia, as the power grid would not be able to sustain the proper amount of voltage or really electricity required for the population that lives in this area. Or we may see, and this is another possible option, that they continue to run the power plant and just hope and pray that the power plant's generators don't end up degrading to the point that they force themselves to be shut down before the Russians can end up repairing it bit by bit and piece by piece over the next few months. But moving on from that and into the area of St. Petersburg, we also got to see that the deputy minister was arrested of the Leningrad district. This was a fairly interesting development right here. And a lot of people, that's pretty rough looking right there. But a lot of people may be a little bit confused as to what in the world is a big deal about this guy being arrested. And the big deal about this guy being arrested is that the Leningrad military district is brand new. I mean, brand spanking new. And as far as we have been able to see, the minister and the deputy commander, well, the commander and deputy commander of the Leningrad military district pretty much rose up from another military district in the more junior field staff ranks, general staff, whatever you want to call it. And then they were appointed to the Leningrad military district out of the central military district. The fact that this guy is already being arrested on claims of corruption, in its claim that he accepted more than 20 million rubles in bribes, is very interesting because it's leading us to believe this guy has already fallen out of the end circle as soon as he was given a command position, and he is now viewed unfavorably by the Russian government, already showing that their brand new military district is dealing with fatigue and wear before it's even really been put through the rigors yet. I mean, literally, the Leningrad military district was created just this year. It's brand new. The Russian government...
Also, is it just me, or does it look like this guy's wearing like a really bad office rug from like the 1990s or something like that? It's the same color to it. It's like one of those nasty old office rugs.
Yeah, I would have to say it really does look like that. I really don't know what to make of it, but it looks pretty rough. But still, beyond that, it does seem as though this guy is going to be having not that much of a fun time. Because once the Russian Federation's central government goes against you, there's really no way out. They're going to find the guy guilty and put him in prison for however long they want, and then he might end up disappearing in prison, which is a fairly normal thing that happens. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, pretty wild piece of news at that, and we're also going to be talking about something that the Russians have been greatly concerned about before we move on into the Kursk front. The Russians have been greatly concerned and have been making a lot of ruckus lately off of the idea of Western countries like the United States providing authorization for long-range weapons like the ATACMS missiles to be fired into the Russian Federation to be able to attack any kinds of targets in that area. A lot of people have been saying that recently, over the past day, it may actually be the case that the United States gives approval to Ukraine to be able to fire off long-range American weapons into the Russian Federation. And we actually may be the first to do such a thing. Some people are saying that nothing has changed so far, but still a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts and ideas on what this means or what will be happening in the future. Will the United States lift the restrictions and sanctions? What will they do? And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about this as well?
All right, so in this poll, about 51% of the audience said the U.S. will lift restrictions very soon, while 29% said they might change it, but it's unlikely, and 11% said the U.S. will never lift the restrictions. And on this one, I must say that right now it doesn't look very interesting that the restrictions will be lifted. It sounds like the U.S. admin is currently stuck in its position to basically keep the restrictions they are and not let Ukraine hit the airfields, which they basically desperately need to hit to be able to take out the Russian long-range bombers. The only good piece of news we're hearing right now about potential new weapons being allowed by use by Ukraine is perhaps the JASSM long-range air-launched cruise missile. Currently, there are negotiations going on to perhaps let Ukraine use that, but of course it isn't finalized yet, so we'll just have to wait and see if that actually becomes reality. But on this poll, I would say I'm probably with the 29%. they might change the restrictions, but in my opinion, it's pretty unlikely. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, the United States probably is going to lift restrictions maybe soon on the missile systems. I'm not entirely sure, because it seems like a lot of people are starting to say that, but the honest truth is that the United States has been on the cusp of giving approval for an incredibly long amount of time. And we've never really seen that approval has been given yet. So while it looks like they're really close again, I'm not going to believe it until it's actually passed. And on top of that, the United States government has never been one to really be proactive so far in support. They've always been behind the curb or having to wait for someone else to set the trend, and then they follow it, which is incredibly bizarre considering that we're the leader of the Western world. But nevertheless, that is what they do, and largely that's what I believe right now. I don't think they're going to be giving approval until the French or the British give some sort of approval themselves, or something along those lines, at least in my opinion. But with that, we're now going to be moving on out of this little bit of news and on into the Kursk Oblast, where we got to see some pretty interesting things happening today. Now, really quickly, I will bring y'all over here to the Deep State map on what they show inside the Kursk Oblast as being controlled. It's fairly similar to our map, but it does leave out some areas, or kind of change the way the map looks in some directions. Like, for example, we were able to confirm by Ukrainian governmental statement that the Ukrainians do control Komarovka, but at the moment, we don't really see that being represented on Deep State's map. It's showed as no man's land instead of actual Ukrainian control, so for this reason, we don't really quote the map too much, at least in this general direction, because it seems like it may be a little bit off, at least according to what we know. But at the same time, it does seem as though the Ukrainians have solidified their hold in this region and will not be leaving anytime soon. From what we can tell, the Ukrainians are not really making a lot of ground in any directions in the Koronivo, Kromsky-Byky, or Bolshoi Soldatskoy area, but they are continuing to hold their ground, and the Ukrainian president has made it quite clear that their position in this area is going to be permanent. They're not going to be leaving until the war ends, meaning that the Russians will have to keep a constant standing force in this region to be able to keep this thing going. So moving on into our specific news, we were able to see some Ukrainian equipment within the area of Kursk, and it appeared to have been considerably destroyed, at least in this clip. Once again, we don't really show Ukrainian casualties or losses of vehicles or manpower in really any other front, but it is important to show it in the Kursk front to actually get an idea of how well they're doing. This appears to have been a Max Pro, and whatever hit it, we're assuming it was an anti-tank guided missile, literally shredded the MRAP apart. And that may have happened a little bit later after the vehicle had been disabled, and we can see a couple of more Ukrainian vehicles out here which have also been damaged. It appears that some sort of a civilian vehicle was damaged, along with two trucks, possibly another Max Pro. So it does seem like some decent losses were taken in this area. From what we can understand, this is close to the area of Koronivo, and we're getting a little bit of an idea that resistance is heavy in this area. And while the Russians are taking very high losses, the Ukrainians are also starting to mount up some losses as well, as the Battle of Koronivo has actually evolved into a very large and major battle. The reason why we know that to be certain is because we're not getting a lot of footage or video evidence out of Koronivo from either the Russian side or the Ukrainian side, which is letting us know that they're ensuring operational security as strongly as they can on both ends, and for that reason, there must be a heavy battle going on there. Otherwise, they wouldn't really care about operational security all that much. We were also able to see that the Russians are starting to employ a new kind of mine system. And we saw this a little while ago, but we're starting to see it again. We're starting to see that the little the mine drones, or the mine-laying drones, are beginning to pop up in incredibly large numbers within the Kursk Oblast. And it seems that the Russians are starting to use this as a new form of anti-personnel and anti-tank weaponry. And so here's the clip. And we can see the Ukrainian soldier walking up to it, and we can see one of them laying in the grass near to a road with a mine attached. And we can now see the Ukrainian soldier walking on down a little bit further. And we see another one of them. I mean, there's a lot of these things, actually. It looks like they're trying to put these down anywhere and everywhere they can, especially inside of Russia, to try and stop any kind of advances from making ground, or at least trying to inflict more casualties on the Ukrainian forces. They're literally all over the road.
And these things are like bombs that jump up and fly up and hit like tanks and stuff?
No, they're just mines. They use a drone to fly them in, and they flip the drone over when it's about to hit the ground. It hits the ground, and the mine's sitting upright. So it's kind of like planting a mine without having to send a person physically through Ukrainian lines with the landmines to go plant them.
Oh, that's very interesting. I thought the drone was gonna like jump up or something and go flying like at a tank or something and blow it up. But I guess that's pretty ingenious actually. Like to do this. I'm not sure how well it's working because they're finding them like this. But for the Russians, this is about as smart as it gets.
Yeah, it's about as smart as it gets. It's actually a pretty smart idea if it was not as conspicuous, but it is fairly conspicuous to look at because they got the mines like laid down with white high-vis duct tape, and then it's lifted off the ground because it's sitting on a drone. So it's not really like the most concealed kind of mine laying that's ever been done. But if a Ukrainian soldier for some reason wasn't paying attention, they would end up driving over this thing and it would end up blowing up. So that's kind of interesting to note. They're not really that fleshed out at this point. Hopefully they won't flesh them out anytime in the near future, and the Ukrainians will be able to figure out to make a more effective version of the mine-laying drone. But moving on from that and into the area of Malaya Luknia, we did get to see an interview with a local Russian woman in this area that was speaking about the Russians, her opinions on the Russians, to a Ukrainian soldier that was in this area. And so here's the clip.
Військові, вони ж знають прекрасно, що тут місцеве населення все одно б'ють атаки по всьому.
Не говоріть. Ми страдаємо з-за цього, і ви, бідні, страдаєте теж. То б жінками дома сиділи б з дітками, і ми б теж, а бачите, як вийшло.
А до чого, як ви думаєте, чого вони в 22-му році туди до вас полізли?
Та спросіть. Дурак тот Путін, прости Господи, що скаже
Oh, damn.
таке слово. Що його черті туди, що йому не вистачає. Не можуть те саме, як-то соорудить все. Свої же люди. Чого він поліз, ідіот? І ми страдаємо. І ви страдаєте теж. Свої же люди. Раніше в Суми їздили, і торгували, там їздили, і общалися, і в город туди їздили, і на базар їздили, все ми. Хорошо жили, а бачите, як воно все вийшло.
Dang, she doesn't really
I have a
seem...
feeling this woman might be getting a visit from the good old FSB before it's over with, if they can ever get here.
Man, I'm telling you what, and it seems like she's not really that happy with the Russian government at all, and it seems like maybe a lot of locals may not be like that. That might be the case. But anyways, moving on from that clip and on into our next bit of news in the area, we also got to see a couple of pictures taking down the highway leading up towards Korodnivo. We know this because the road signs that were seen were both on the highway leading up towards the town of Korodnivo, meaning that Ukrainian forces clearly have control around Lyubomovka and have enough security and safety in the general area to be able to take pictures out in the wide open and take a little while to pose for the camera and all that stuff. We got to see one of the pictures near to the sign heading towards Lyubomovka. We can actually see here, it's a New Zealand volunteer. Now, this is something that the Russians have tried to make up a story about, but the Russians have claimed that the New Zealanders and other foreign members are foreign mercenaries hired by the Ukrainian government to try and conduct action against the Russian Federation. The truth is that they're foreign volunteers from the International Legion that have ended up getting attached to other units through time, and so they are foreigners, not Ukrainians inside of Russia, but at the same time, there is a little bit of a truth to the story that there are foreigners inside of Russia fighting on the behalf of the Ukrainian armed forces. Because we have seen British volunteers, American volunteers, I believe we've seen a few Polish volunteers as well, some Belarusians, some members of the Sheikh Mansour battalions, or really the Chechens as a whole fighting on the Ukrainian side, this New Zealander right here. There's been a decent amount of them, and it is really interesting to see that they continue to reappear over and over in this area, and it looks as though they're becoming a fairly common force within this region. We also got to see another photo op by some Ukrainian forces as well, as we got to see the Raven Company taking a picture in front of the sign in front of a town, I forgot the name of it, but it's near to the area of Lyubomovka, and it looks as though they're fairly well kitted as well. They got some M4s, some AKs, all kinds of nice stuff, and we love to see. It's incredibly good to see and incredibly good to know that the Ukrainian armed forces continue to have a very heavy presence in the region, and not just a heavy one, it's strong enough that they are able to take pictures within the zone they control and not have to worry about artillery fire or drone strikes being able to reach them because it's so far behind the front lines, no one would really see them or be able to fire at them for that matter. We also got to see within the Sudza direction that a Russian, well, a Ukrainian actually, was in a merch shop and got to see a really Russian t-shirt with Putin on it.
What the hell is that? Is that Putin like pretending like he's fighting or something?
It's Putin holding a fish. I think he was fishing when the picture was taken or something like that. I don't really know, but the shirt is just bizarre.
That is bizarre, by the way. And also, I can't tell. Is that like a kid's size or something like that? The t-shirt's stupid, by the way. Like, it looks really dumb. But this guy honestly looks happy as hell. He found it. He's like, my God, look at this cringe. He's like, I gotta take this back home and show it to my comrades, bliat.
Dude, he said, wow, cringe. It's like, dude, this is just straight up cringe. Like, I don't know what he even says on the shirt, but this is probably, and there's a lot of them too, man. Look back there. There's like a whole, like, crate of them or something.
Man, they found the propaganda merch store out here for Putin, and they raided it. Man, that's crazy. Look at all the t-shirts on the wall back there as well, like on the little clothesline back there. Those are some crappy looking designs too.
Man, it's kind of a rough store. I would have to say that our merch store has done a lot better with putting out quality merch than Putin's goons. So just remember that, folks. Big shout out to officialenforcerstore.com. Great place to be. Great place to get merch. This, not so much. Really crappy merch, low quality, and not only that, pro-Russian. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and kind of going over a general analysis of this area. Because we didn't really get a lot of frontline footage and picture evidence from this region, but we were able to get a couple of things out of what today appeared to be like in this area. Once again, we're not really seeing the Ukrainians advancing onto the brigade south of the Reka Sem, and this is starting to get a little confusing at this point on the battle analysis end of things. From what we can tell, the Ukrainians may be trying to attrit this unit before they finally attack them and end up overwhelming them or wiping them out, one or the other, and they just keep on destroying the bridge crossings on the Reka Sem without actually engaging the brigade on the southern side. It's a fairly decent tactic if you're wanting to mitigate losses while at the same time weaken your enemy before an attack, but the problem is that they're losing valuable time that they had at the start, where they were able to have an element of surprise and really just overwhelm this unit because they weren't able to react to the speed at which Ukraine is moving. So they're kind of losing the element, the advantage that they had at the beginning, but at the same time, they are making sure to wear this Russian unit down slowly over time. The other problem is, though, is that if they're not able to destroy the pontoon bridges quick enough, the Russians may be able to sneak over some supplies here and there intermittently enough that the Russians are able to actually hold this area and keep this unit supplied and keep it running, which could end up posing problems for Ukraine well on into the future, as they may never be able to strongly secure this western flank, because this brigade, no matter how depleted or how weakened it gets, will be able to give enough resistance that the Ukrainians will not be able to completely control it. So in this area, the situation seems to be a little bit in a gray area. Around the Battle of Koronivo right now, Koronivo seems to be a dead end for the most part. It seems like both sides are going to be fighting very heavily in this area. We're expecting that the Ukrainians are probably going to dig in Koronivo village. The Russians will end up controlling Koronivo town, and that battle will go on for an incredibly long time. The honest truth is that Ukraine doesn't even really have to fight that much anymore. They could pretty much stage a defensive in this area at this point and hold it, because the Russians now have to have the priority of pushing Ukraine out of this area, so that way they can then free up these troops to be diverted elsewhere. So at this point, if anyone has to conduct an offensive, if anyone has to, not if they want to, the Russians would be that group. Also in the Kromsky-Bicky area, we're not really sure what's happening in this area. There seems to be an informational black hole coming out of this region. But from what we can tell, the Russians are kind of not really fighting in this area. Neither are the Ukrainians. It's really the quietest area of the front. And for that reason, we just don't really know much. And this front seems to be remaining unchanged. In the Bolshoi Soldatskoye area, we do know that the Ukrainian 225th Battalion of the 176th Territorial Defense Forces, as well as the Ukrainian 82nd Air Assault Brigade, are continuing to conduct actions against the Russian 810th Separate Infantry separate naval infantry brigade, which was brought up from Crimea during the initial part of the offensive. This unit was considered a crack unit of elite troops, but so far we've seen that 810th has fared pretty badly in some areas, and one of their battalions was half destroyed or nearly completely destroyed during a battle that occurred around 2 weeks ago. We've never seen that battalion, at least in force, brought back forward onto the battlefield. So we're assuming that the 810th is now down one battalion out of the 6 or so combined arms battalions that they had initially. Another thing that we're seeing is that the 176th and the 82nd on the Ukrainian side seem to be slowing down their offensive tempo in this direction, also showing that they may be coming up on heavier resistance. Although the 810th has been weakened, they're still putting up somewhat more significant resistance, and so for this reason this front line appears to be slowing down, and the offensive tempo in this area also seems to be slowing down as a direct result of that. Meanwhile, in the area around Belitsa and Giri, we haven't really seen much going on down here. We're waiting to see what will be happening. We're not entirely sure. We get like absolutely nothing out of this area, to be entirely honest with you all, in picture and video evidence and analysis. So for that reason, I can only tell you all that the front lines are remaining stable, but we don't really have anything else to go on in this area, rather than it looks like it's remaining stable. So we'll be waiting to see what happens down there as well, but it seems like the situation in Kursk may be kind of leveling out for now, but it still is in Ukraine's favor at the moment, at least on a defensive battle. And for the Russians on an offensive level, we don't think they'll be able to conduct one until much later, because they'll need a 3-1 or a 5-1 attacker's advantage over the Ukrainian armed forces to be able to even begin an attack, much less actually succeed at one. So we'll be waiting and seeing how the Russians actually are able to fight in this area, because we really don't have any indicator that they're even ready to begin counteroffensives at this point and try and push Ukraine out. And then if the Ukrainians dig in and they really heavily fortify this area, the Russians would probably need a 7-1 attacker's advantage in this region. And just to give you all an idea of how big of a battle this will end up being, we believe right now there's about 17 to 20,000 Ukrainian armed forces that are inside of the area of Kursk in terms of combat power. That's quite a significant amount from what we can tell, and right now the Russians, from what we know, are getting really close to being on a 1-to-1 force size compared to the Ukrainians in this region, meaning that the Russians probably have about 15 to 17,000 combat troops in this area right now that are getting onto the front lines. The thing about that is that that's not good enough for an offensive. They would have to have a 3-1 advantage at a minimum to be able to conduct an offensive, even in just a localized area in this region. Meaning that in the numbers, they would probably need about 60,000 combat troops to be able to just start an offensive, much less maintain one that would last for a while. The other thing, this is actually one of the bigger ones, is that in reality, they probably actually need a 5-1 attacker's advantage, meaning that they would need about 100,000 combat troops, which is about half of all of the troops that they have in Ukraine right now, from what we know, in Kursk, to be able to actually conduct a successful counterattack and push Ukraine out. And then if the Ukrainians have a heavily fortified defensive position in this area that they start to build later on, the Russians would need a 7-1 attacker's advantage in this area to be able to uproot the Ukrainians from the defensive positions and then push them out, meaning that the Russians would actually need about 120,000 combat troops, which is exactly half of everything they have inside of Ukraine right now, to be able to push them out of Kursk. So you can kind of see that based off of those numbers, and also the idea that Russia doesn't really have a lot of spare available combat power, the Russians really will never be poised, at least in the numbers game, to be able to conduct an offensive and start pushing the Ukrainians out. The Ukrainians probably will be able to stay here until the end of the war, and the best that the Russians could hope for is to try and build up a strong enough force on their own side to be able to stop any Ukrainian offensives later on from driving deeper and deeper into Kursk and getting closer to the Kursk nuclear power plant or the city of Kursk itself. So it seems like this area is not doing all too well for Russia. It's going to be doing quite well for Ukraine. So moving on from that, we have seen this, and this has been fairly interesting as well over the past few days, really the past week. the Belarusians are continuing to move equipment around in the Gomel area, and we were able to see it again. Once again, more T-72Bs being brought into the area. Actually, this looks like old pictures. Wait a minute, hang on. The new pictures are on Twitter. Big shout out to our Twitter, by the way. If y'all want to go join it, link is in the description below. If you follow us, you actually get to see some of the news that we talk about here on this channel before we're even live on air. So let me see. Interesting. Hold up. This was posted 10 hours ago on Military News, and the one I got was actually from Reddit. These are actually pictures, and it didn't cross my mind until I saw them on stream. These are actually pictures from about a week ago, because we showed these exact pictures of these tanks in those pictures about a week ago. So I don't know what people are doing trying to recirculate that story. We're actually going to be removing it from our map because I didn't realize that up until now that we've already seen those pictures. But still, once again, from what we know, while more forces are not moving into the area, because now we don't have picture or video evidence to corroborate that claim, we do know that those Belarusian forces are still in the Gomel border area, and that does pose a somewhat serious threat to the Ukrainian armed forces, or at least the Ukrainian strategic overview in the entirety of the war, because if they ever were to conduct an actual offensive in the northern Ukraine, that may possibly end up overwhelming the Ukrainian defensive abilities, and they would end up having to prioritize the northern front, and then end up completely screwing another one of their fronts over somewhere else inside of Ukraine. But moving on from that little side note inside of Belarus, we have heard that Poland says that it has a duty to preemptively shoot down incoming missiles and drones heading into their airspace. And while they say that, we've seen that they've never actually followed through on that claim. And a lot of people are wondering, what is stopping them? What is stopping them? Is the Polish government stopping them? Or is it some sort of an outside power like the United States that's stopping the Poles from being able to actually properly defend their airspace against incoming threats and air targets being fired from the Russian Federation? And a lot of people have been saying some very interesting things at that about this. It seems like everyone's kind of split on the matter. Really, it seems like some people are saying that the Polish government's holding them back and the American government's holding them back. But what are people really thinking about this, Matthew, and what are you thinking? What is really stopping Poland from shooting down these drones and missiles that fly into their airspace and actually protecting their skies? And what are people thinking about it?
All right, so we've been hearing Poland bat around the idea quite a bit recently of shooting down missiles and drones before they enter their airspace, before they enter Polish airspace. They want to shoot those down over Ukraine, but the catch is they're not actually doing it like the enforcer said. They simply keep saying that, and they don't actually take any action. So the question is, what is stopping them? So it's a pretty evenly split poll. About 43% said Poland is stopping themselves, and 42% said the USA is actually stopping Poland. And on this one, I would have to say that with all the talk that Poland's doing, and we have seen that Poland is willing to take action when they want to, to me it seems like, and of course, I want to give a disclaimer, this is speculation, but to me it seems like probably the USA is probably stopping them. We do know for a fact the USA has a policy of de-escalation, and by shooting stuff down over Ukraine, that would, in the US's mind, escalate the war even further. In reality, there's nothing Russia could really do to retaliate, but the US feels that might piss off Putin even worse, and maybe Putin might say some more offensive words to us all and scare us. So we don't want to let Poland go out there and do that, is my opinion, because we don't want to cause any more problems. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, the U.S. government is stopping Poland, because it wouldn't make a lot of sense to say Poland is stopping themselves, because they've made it quite clear throughout the war they've had a very big leaning towards shooting down these incoming targets, the drones, the missiles, and any other kinds of flying objects that enter their airspace that are not allowed there. They've made it very clear throughout the war they want to shoot all of those down, every single one of them. And from what we can tell, the U.S. government probably is the one holding them back. We have heard such things in the past where the U.S. government has said, whoa, you can't shoot that down. That would cause further escalation. We've actually heard those direct statements from the U.S. government to Romania and Poland saying they cannot end up shooting down any of these drones like the Shaheds that continuously fly across the Danube and into Romania, because by shooting them down, they might start escalating with the Russian Federation and making it look like they're taking armed action against the Russians, and for that reason might draw NATO into the war. And that's been the going theme for about 3 years at this point. It's getting really close to 3 years, actually. And we've seen that the Polish have time and time again said that they want to shoot down these weapons, these missiles, these drones, and time again they've said they're going to do it. And then time and time again they've had to back off of that statement and say that they're not going to do it. And we know that it's not the Polish government that is having a bipolar disorder and they're saying one thing and then they're doing another. They are wanting to do one thing. The entire Polish government is unified around the idea of protecting their airspace, but the U.S. government, the United States of America, is largely telling them that they cannot do such a thing, and they have to try and make sure not to escalate, even at the cost of their own safety, and even at the cost of Polish civilian lives, eventually in the future. That is something that I think is a very bad stance to be in for the Western world, because it shows that we are actually scared of the Russian Federation and what they may do in response to what we're doing. Now, I do understand that escalation, at least unwarranted escalation, is not a good thing, and we generally do want to try and avoid escalation wherever we can. But this is a situation where we really cannot avoid escalation. The Russians are provoking the situation into an escalatory matter. Flying drones and missiles that have bombs attached to them through the airspace of another country is always going to be considered a violation of that country's national sovereignty and a great threat to their security, and not only that, a great threat to the health and safety of their citizenry. Poland and Romania have had to deal with this threat for years now, and we have seen that they have not ever been able to respond properly. While they may be in NATO, and while they may be in the Western sphere, and they get a lot of their weaponry from the United States, that does not mean that the United States gets to tell these countries how they can defend their own national sovereignty. If they want to shoot down a Russian drone flying over Polish skies, Poland owns the skies over their own country, and for that reason, they have whatever right they wish to have to either not shoot down those incoming missiles and drones or to shoot down every single one of them that they see. That is something that I believe is an inherent right to those countries, because much like a nation has a right to exist, a nation has a right to defend its national sovereignty and its security interests, especially within its own airspace and borders. That is something that will always exist for Western countries, and I do not believe that the United States should continue to have an undue say and influence over these countries and their internal domestic decision-making processes when concerned about the safety of the Polish or Romanian citizenry. And so for this reason,
I agree. I agree with you 100% on that. And also, let me make a point real quick. I want to be heard out on this one because this might be somewhat controversial. Not, obviously, it's not U.S. politics. But in my opinion, what the U.S. is currently doing with foreign policy over here with Russia, Ukraine, and Poland, they're basically putting way more effort into deterring our allies from defending their territory. Like, for example, Poland. Poland not only will not shoot down drones and missiles over Ukraine, they also won't even shoot them down over their own airspace. When they enter their airspace, they're scared to shoot them down then, and then they crash on Poland's territory, and then everybody's like, oh, there's a drone on our territory. We didn't even get to shoot it down because we didn't want to. We were scared to do it. It's like, why is Poland scared to shoot down weapons over their airspace? It makes total sense. It's self-defense to shoot down stuff over their airspace that's hostile targets, but yet they won't do it. That's because, in my opinion, the U.S. is putting way more pressure on our allies not to escalate than they are putting pressure on Putin not to escalate the war himself. And Putin is the enemy. Our allies, like Poland over here, are simply trying to defend their citizens. But yet, at the same time, the U.S. will use things like financial pressures. For example, they'll threaten Poland probably in the background that if they don't comply with what they're asking by not escalating the war, then they might pull funding maybe for one of the Patriot systems or something like that Poland wanted to purchase from the U.S., or maybe withdraw authorization for it. And that carries a lot of weight. The financial stuff that the U.S. uses as leverage, that is massive weight over our allies not to take action, which is just, it's really honestly an abuse in my opinion, because we, like the enforcer said, we shouldn't be delving into these countries' domestic affairs when it comes to their defense. That should be solely their discretion, because they are, of course, a sovereign country. And while we do have the financial leverage to have over those countries, we shouldn't always exercise it. It's not always right.
I would agree with that. And I think that is a very undue influence that America is leveraging with our weapons shipments, and a lot of our Western allies being arms partners with us and purchasing a lot of our equipment. I think it's a very undue kind of an influence that we have, telling them, hey, look, if you want to continue to buy our weapons and continue to have a military at all, you need to do what we say or else. I don't like the idea of that, especially when they're dealing with defensive matters. We're doing that also as well in a form with Israel and Taiwan, and we're telling them how they can end up responding and reacting to other countries in the world that may be provoking them into a war, and they really don't have an option. There has to be a response. And a lot of people don't understand that. There always has to be a response. Otherwise, the concept of border sovereignty or integrity or national sovereignty as a whole is being weakened every single time there is not an actual response. Like with Poland and with Romania, time and time again, it's becoming very clear that if you're a country that runs your mouth a lot and you generally have no regard at all for the West warning you about anything, you can do whatever you want. You could fly a bomb over Poland and no one would shoot it down because they would be too scared of the loud mouth getting a little bit angrier. And that should not be the kind of mindset that people have in the world, because then they sit there and go, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just nuke Israel, and I'm sure the West will do nothing, because they'll be scared of escalating, because we're a loudmouth that doesn't really care about consequences. Or, better yet, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to war with South Korea, because why the hell not? I mean, no one's going to come to their defense. I mean, quite clearly, they're scared of escalation, and so we could end up offending onto the West, and they'd be scared to offend us back equally, because they'd be scared that we might offend them even greater the next come around. That is a ridiculous way of working our Western world. It's going to continue to degrade people's way that they take us seriously, because we are a force to be reckoned with. We are a force to be taken seriously. But time and time again, whenever it comes to people actually having to treat us seriously, we continue to act like people don't really have to give us a damn on what we say or what we do. Like, for example, if you were to say, I own a house, and this yard around this house is mine, and because of that, I have rights as a property owner, and I'm going to make sure to exercise them. If I don't like people like the next door neighbor who keeps on driving his four-wheeler through my front lawn and pretty much destroying the grass up there, I'm going to tell him, you're trespassed from the property, don't come on to it. And then he's just going to do it again. And then when he does it again, I'm going to be so scared that he's going to get off the four-wheeler and sock me, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to back off and say, whoa, wait a minute. We don't want to escalate with this guy. I don't want to turn this into a fight or anything. So while I'm telling him that, this is my yard and, it's my house and everything, I'm not going to exercise any control over my front yard at all. This guy can do whatever because I don't want to turn it into a fist fight. But the honest truth is, in that kind of a situation, you ought to be turning it into a fist fight. You ought to be going outside and say, hey, didn't I tell you not to drive your four-wheeler over this front yard? You're trespassed. Get out of here. I'm calling the police or I'm beating your ass, one or the other. And then if the guy wants to escalate it from there, that's on him. And honestly, if the police ever got called up into a situation like that, they would say it was on that guy. He should have known better. It's your property. He ended up messing with you on your property. The stupid guy got off his four-wheeler, and then you knocked his teeth out. It's like the cops would literally go, sounds like self-defense to me. And not only that, you were trespassed from his property. So not only are we going to, charge you with trespassing, we might charge you with assault or battery even if he was the person who swung first. So that's what I would say. Like, if you were to take that into a person-to-person scenario, that this kind of mindset that the West has, it just does not work. It comes off as weakness, and it ends up coming off as something that only a spineless person would do. And the West shouldn't be spineless, because we have more than an ability to knock the teeth out of the Russians if they ended up crossing the line a little bit too much. That would be my opinion. Go ahead.
I think the whole misunderstanding here sort of stems from a misunderstanding of what respect looks like on the global stage. Respect is not gained by making the other country like you, because that will never motivate any country to respect your boundaries ever. That's not the way it works on foreign policy. Countries have to fear other countries, and unless there is fear, then there is no mutual respect. And I think right now the approach the West is taking is they're trying to give some leeway to Russia. Like, for example, we won't shoot down stuff over Ukraine if you won't go any crazier than you currently already are. And Putin simply looks like that as basically appeasement. Like, that means I can go a little bit further and keep pushing it, and maybe there's a boundary somewhere, but I'll find out sooner or later once I push the boundary a little farther. And there's no fear, there's no deterrence, there's no nothing. It's just like, basically we're hoping that Putin will have like good graces and stop what he's doing, but he hasn't. If he had that in his head, like, for example, like if he had logic and common sense and care for humanity, he would have never invaded Ukraine, because there's no reason to do that. So clearly the Western approach currently right now is not working, and it needs to change.
I would completely agree with that, and it should change as soon as possible. Problem is, it probably won't. To be entirely honest, I'll be completely honest with y'all because I want to make sure, because some people are trying to turn this into a political thing, and we don't do politics here on this channel. We don't pick a political side. So let me make sure not to pick a political side and tell y'all how it really will be. Both sides are going to be like this here in America. The side who's currently in charge and the other side if they were elected. This will largely continue on status quo, in my personal opinion, and you will not see either side actually take a strong stance to try and put down the Russians and put them back in their place and remind them that the Western world is the foremost sphere in the world for a specific reason. We'll probably never see that either side does that, so this will probably continue on for quite a while. And I'm seeing a lot of people asking somewhat political questions, which we do not allow on this channel. A load of them, actually. So hopefully we can try and get a little bit of a handle on that here soon. But beyond that, I would say, no, nothing will change. Nothing is going to change at all. And a lot of people seem to be under misconception that there is change to be brought about in the Ukraine war from a U.S. election. I will let y'all know nothing is going to change in any way, shape, or form. The same aggravating things that we're dealing with right now, the U.S.'s ineptitude to rightfully escalate in situations where it needs to escalate, or to allow our allies to escalate when they need to in the form or matter of self-defense, that will not change. The support to Ukraine will not change. None of this will change. And a lot of people just don't get that. And you'll get it once the election's over and once things have kind of run their course of a sort. You'll see it then. But until now, we'll just wait. We'll let everyone bump their gums and say all kinds of different stuff about, oh, this person will do this and this person will do that. They won't, and y'all will just wait and see, I suppose, to the people who were saying that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, on what we're seeing at the moment. And before we move on into the actual Ukraine war news from inside of Ukraine, from Kyiv, from the area around the location unknowns, Vovchansk to Severanski Forest, and also the Donetsk area that we have not covered yet, before we get into all of that, I want to make sure that we take a quick little moment to address some of the questions that we've had so far, because we've had quite a decent amount of them. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first question segment of the night, we do have some very good super chats tonight. And first off, thank you all very much for the support to the channel. And our first one is going to go to Purple Gerbil, the channel legend. He throws in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that support. They said, LSA forever, and take one from the chat.
Hey, and LSA forever, and thank you so much for the support, Purple Gerbil, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for enjoying this channel enough to support it. It is folks like you who support this channel who make this thing possible. And if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running for as long as we have been, which has been insanely long. 923 days. We are only 77 days away from being on the 1000th day of war. And for about 6 days a week, every single day, at the exact same time, every single night, we have been on air and covering this news. And it's really crazy to think that we've been doing that for this long, and that so many of y'all have enjoyed this channel so much and have supported it and helped it to keep on running, because it's an ad-free, sponsor-free stream. The only people who help to keep this thing running is each and every single one of y'all. And for that, I got to give y'all a huge thanks and appreciation, because if it was not for folks like you, Purple Gerbil, who really did enjoy this channel and found it worthwhile to support, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We run this thing without making a dime. Like, the streams do not make a single cent beyond y'all's support. And really quickly, to actually show y'all that, to actually back that up with proof, here's the proof right there. Y'all can see monetization is off on all the streams. Some of them ended up getting age restricted. Some of them ended up getting content ID'd, which is always unfun. I don't like that. But beyond that, the only way that we actually make a living, it's not from ads, not from sponsors, it's just from all of y'all who enjoy the channel and continuously support it and help us to be able to make a living. And for that, I got to thank you so much once again for that massive support, Purple Gerbil. The LSA will never die, thanks to you. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and our question from the chat is going to go to, let's see here, let's scroll up and get one. This one goes to Urban X, who said, do you think that Poland will intervene on Belarus if they invade Ukraine?
Will Poland intervene on Belarus if they invade Ukraine? Highly doubtful, considering that they can hardly defend their airspace right now because of U.S. interference. I would highly doubt that the United States would then approve a Polish response to counter-invade Belarus because of their invasion of Ukraine. So to be entirely honest, I would greatly doubt that. I know the Polish government would be very much behind that idea and that decision, but the U.S. government, which has a large sway over Poland right now, would not be a big fan of that kind of a decision by the Polish, and we'll probably never see it happen for that reason. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also another thing I want to say before we move on from that is that a lot of people seem to have like this disparity, this illogical disparity. They never really look into the numbers or anything. They always just assume that Belarus is like this military powerhouse because it's a dictatorship, and usually the word dictatorship is kind of associated with an incredibly strong military in number and also equipment because, you know, the big military and the people suffer because the dictator wants a big army or something like that. That's always what people usually think when they think of a dictatorship like Lukashenko's in Belarus. But the reality is that the Belarusians have a very, very weak military. It's only about 70,000 strong. That's the entirety of the military, including the army, the air force, and that's really it. I mean, they don't have a navy, really, because it's a landlocked country, but their army and air force are quite small, and they're pretty much entirely made up of conscripts, meaning that they're poorly trained, and much like the old Soviet armies, they have a non-existent NCO corps, making sure that their enlisted operate on a very, very weak scale. And not only that, they also have a very inexperienced and green massive officer corps, which doesn't really bode that well when actually getting into combat. We could see that quite clearly with the Russians nowadays, but the Belarusians would be that on steroids. They would suck supremely. And so the Polish, on the other hand, have one of the largest armies in Europe at the moment. They actually, I believe, have one of the largest standing armies in Europe outside of the United States. They also have an incredibly modern and massive myriad of equipment that they have at their disposal currently. They would absolutely curb stomp the Belarusians on their own. So we know that the Polish, as far as an actual military exchange with Belarus, would not be afraid to get into one because it actually would be very lopsided in Poland's favor. But because of external diplomatic pressures like from the United States and not wanting Poland to escalate a conflict for the whole of NATO, we would probably see that they would never be able to do something like that to try and give it a much deeper explanation about why that would not be a possibility, at least at the moment, in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And also, thank you so much once again, Purple Gerbil, for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality each and every single day. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on here to our next super chat question. Also, real quick, Enforcer, can you hear me talking clearly right now? Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear right now.
Okay, was I coming through loud and clear the last question I spoke out?
Yes, but before that though, there was like these weird things, like like your microphone would do one of three things. You would either be talking, it would do that like really quickly, and it would get incredibly loud for like no reason, and it would like blast my eardrums out, or it would do something like RFK Jr. or something like that, and I was like, what the hell is that? Or it would condense it all, where it would be like, okay, and we're going to be moving on to the next question, and it would do like one of those three things at the beginning.
I just wanted to make sure. Because I was looking here to watch the whole time. The mic's not having any issues at all. It's coming through loud and clear. But apparently Discord's having issues because the thing you're describing, the compression, also the loud and the low, that's not a mic problem. That's like a connection problem. So I don't know what's going on with that. Hopefully it fixes itself. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat. We have a $50 donation from Peace with War, a channel legend, by the way. And thank you very much for that $50 support. I said, I hope you guys are doing well, and will the Ukrainians be able to hold the Russians at Pokrovsk? And if not, where will the line defense move to?
And I thank you so much for the support. Peace with War, an absolute legend of the channel. And again, thank you so much for being here tonight and supporting the channel and helping it to keep on running. And to answer your question, I would say that as far as we can tell, Pokrovsk is possibly likely to hold. I'm not really sure on that though, because while I am saying that they are able to stabilize the front over the past 48 hours, a frontline stabilization like this has happened once or twice before in the battles outside of Avdiivka and heading west, and we've seen that eventually the Russians have been able to break those defensive lines and then continue pushing in deeper. So for that reason, while they are stabilizing the front line right now, and it does look like they're trying to create an effective defense, that might not last that long. We don't really know. We'll kind of have to play it by ear as it goes. And the Ukrainians and the Russians, because of their operational security, they don't really talk that much about what they're doing right now, what kind of forces are available in that area, and the specifics of the fighting there either. So it's really hard for us to get a perfect analysis and really get an idea of how strong the Ukrainian defenses really are in that area. So we'll kind of have to wait and see how that goes and play it by ear. But for now, it does look like they might be able to hold a defense at Pokrovsk at least a couple of miles away, which technically means that the highways heading in and out of Pokrovsk are still open at the moment. But if the battle ever moves on to Pokrovsk, the Ukrainians are kind of already in a losing stance as it is, because with the battlefield at the outskirts of Pokrovsk or right on Pokrovsk, Pokrovsk is no longer usable as a major supply depot or a major logistics hub with all of the highways that interconnect to it and then travel out elsewhere throughout the rest of the region. So this would actually end up posing a pretty big issue if the battle ever actually got pushed onto Pokrovsk, and if the Russians ended up taking it, well, Ukraine largely at that point ended up losing a pretty sizable supply hub. And not only that, the Russians didn't have multiple options to be able to advance in many different directions. They could continue to advance down the E50 towards the very edge of the Donetsk border. They could then start advancing south towards Andriivka and cut off the Ukrainians defending Marinka and Herivka right now. They could also end up trying to advance northwards towards Kramatorsk and Slovyansk from the west, a new offensive axis that the Ukrainians probably have never even accounted for, or they could end up trying to advance towards Konstantinivka, and pretty much creating a bulge in the Ukrainian lines in between Chasiv Yar and Konstantinivka, and also uprooting Ukrainian defensive positions in between Pokrovsk and all the way up to Konstantinivka. So as you can see, the front line would end up being a fairly bad situation if the Russians did end up taking the town. But I have a feeling that with this in mind, the Ukrainians probably do understand this quite well and probably will be able to effect a pretty good defense of the town. Although we have heard complaints coming out from Ukrainian brigade-level commanders that their front has been deprioritized for munitions and reinforcements, and instead, those munitions and reinforcements have been sent to the Kursk front instead. So we don't really know how it will go exactly. It really depends on how the Ukrainian commanders play it, but I do think there's a very good chance that they could hold the town and hold it well enough that they can keep the Russians outside of Pokrovsk and continue to use it as a major logistics hub. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have for tonight.
All right, and the final question of the first question segment is going to go to Hawk, the channel legend, by the way, as well. And they put in a $100 donation, the largest one of the night thus far. And huge shout out to Hawk for throwing in that support. No comment to address, but they put in 2 super stickers. We got the hippo jumping out the chest, the treasure chest right here. He's punching some gold coins and they're bouncing around like Mario. And let's see, we got another one, and it's also the YouTube creature jumping out of an office chair and into some U.S. Army combat armor, mechanized. But thank you very much, Hawk, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Man, did he just turn into some power armor? Like, dude, that thing turned into power armor.
Man, we need more phasers, more power armor. Fresh ones.
But it's a Fallout reference, Matthew.
Man, I'm tying it all together. Star Trek, Fallout, whole thing.
Man, the whole sci-fi world's coming together. But still, beyond that, I gotta say, huge thanks to you so much, Hawk, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who helped make this thing possible, and I gotta say, a massive thanks for the huge support that you've given to this channel. It helps us to keep this thing running day in and day out. And while you didn't throw in a comment, we are still wildly appreciative and greatly thankful that you enjoy this channel enough that you would want to support it and help us to keep this thing running. It's incredibly nice that you would enjoy it that much. And I gotta say, one thing that's been interesting tonight, Matthew, I gotta thank you for dealing with it as best you can. I have never seen an influx of bots like this for the longest time. It's like there's a bot every 10 comments or so right now. It's crazy.
Man, I'm looking for them. I've seen a lot of them. I've knocked a good bit out, probably about 30 or so. But I haven't seen some of the ones you're seeing apparently, because I've seen a few, but not much more than usual, to be honest. But if you spot one, this goes for everybody in the chat as well. If you spot one, tag them, and I'll try to get them a little bit quicker next time. But yeah, man, the bots are coming in mainly with the politics tonight, from what I can tell.
Man, really, like a lot of them are. It's getting closer. Just to let y'all know, this is something that we've expected in the background. It's getting closer to election season, and so the political bots are running around like crazy, trying to make it seem like one side's more popular than the other. It's been insane tonight, though. I've been seeing a good amount of them, and I think, Matthew, I'm going to have to be deputized tonight and get in there and start banning some of them myself, because they're coming in droves. Like, I actually do not think that single-handedly either one of us can deal with them alone. I think this is going to have to be a whole of LSA approach to getting these bots, because there is a decent amount of them, and I just keep seeing them. Like, they either say, like, they're either dissing on the channel, or they're coming in with, like, the most extreme political takes I've ever seen, and I'm like, dang, that's a lot of them.
I think that if it keeps going at this rate, I might have to call in the military-industrial complex and tell them to bring in the Patriots air defense.
I want to say that we're going to have to lock the door and bar it shut, because I just got this brand new killer whale head that I chainsawed off a whale or something like that.
Oh, no way. You got a killer whale. Oh, man. I could put it in the trunk.
I gotta tell you, I've never seen a killer whale of this kind of quality or something like this. I've got to take its head off. Why? I do as the worm guides, damn it. Or something like that. It's like,
Quick, get the bike out and ram it.
no, very yeah, man. Put a moped near it and make it look like it got killed by the moped or something like that.
Man, gets his car out, opens the trunk, throws the killer whale in it, drives all the way up to like Central Park in New York, and drops it off and hits it with a bike. There, that's better.
Oh man, oh goodness, man. I gotta say, it's that was a crazy one. It's a whole crazy saga with that whole thing. Someone said, "Why are you disrespecting someone by doing that voice?" Why the hell does everyone always assume we're disrespecting people when we do voices? I mean, we're doing a joke. I'm sorry that you worship people in politics. We joke about all of them. Wait, your turn. We'll get around to the other ones later on tonight. But I don't know why. There's always someone out there who takes our voices as like making fun of these people. Like, yeah, we are. It's the point. It's a joke, you know. And I don't get it. It always blows me away. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. But it's still a huge shout out to Hawk once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, speaking of keeping this channel running and keeping it rolling, I do have to make a specific point to tell y'all something that will be coming up in the future. We've been saying this for days now, but we want to make sure to get the word out to everyone that we can so that we all know that's coming around before I move into the rest of this news. We are actually, for the first time ever on this channel, going to be taking days off. For 923 days now, we have worked 6 days a week on stream and 7 days technically a week around the clock every single day to make sure that this channel keeps running and that news keeps flowing. But for the first time ever, in 11 days actually, this channel will be going off air, at least semi sort of, for a few days, so that way we can go and take a vacation. It's something that we have not done for an incredibly long time. Technically, we haven't had a vacation in 4 years, and we would like to be able to take one and have a good bit of fun. And so to let y'all know when we're going to be taking a vacation, these are the days that we will not be running a live stream, because we can't run a live stream when we're on vacation, because it kind of defeats the whole purpose of being on vacation, because our entire lives pretty much revolve around our stream schedule. So we wake up at like 12 o'clock in the middle of the day and then stay up till about 3 or 4 o'clock at night and then go to sleep and repeat the cycle. So it's really hard to have a vacation when your entire life's schedule is revolving around work. So to tell y'all, here are the days that we are not going to be running streams here in the near future. September 14th, September 15th, September 16th, September 17th, September 18th, and also maybe September 19th. We possibly may be back on air by September 19th. We're not entirely sure. So play that one by ear. But from September 14th to the 18th, you can guarantee that we will not be running streams during that time. We will be on vacation. And once we come back, it will be right back to a normal streaming schedule like all of y'all have gotten used to, 6 days a week, every single day, at the same time, covering the same news. But we will be gone during those times. So make sure to put that down in your calendars that there will be no Enforcer live streams during that time period. And also make sure to tell anyone that you know that watches this channel that we're going to be off air for those days. Because I don't want anyone to be clicking on every night and then getting frustrated and thinking that we quit YouTube or something. We didn't quit. We're just taking a short break, and we will be right back after that. But with that, I hope that does get that out there as best we can, because we got to thank everyone so much for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, and we thank everyone for also understanding and really wanting us to go on a vacation. A lot of y'all have wanted us to do that, and we're finally going to get to do it. And then we'll probably be back to working for 3 years straight again until we take the next one. But moving on out of that and on into Ukraine, we've also heard something fairly interesting down here. A decent amount of members of the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada have resigned today, and not only that, we are starting to hear that Ukraine Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba is to be fired here soon, at least according to the Ukrainian Pravda. This is something that is very interesting to hear. We are starting to see that a large amount of government officials are either being fired or resigning, and we're not really sure to the cause, because the Ukrainian government doesn't really delve much into why these members of the government are being fired or are resigning. A lot of them end up not getting prosecuted for anything, for any corruption. Some of them end up getting reassigned to other positions. Some of them end up just leaving the government and then largely disappearing into obscurity. And then some of them appear to be resigning, and we're not really sure if they're being forced to resign or if they're resigning because they don't like something the Ukrainian government is doing. We don't really get a lot of information on this either way, and it's leading us to really have some questions, well, at least it's leading me personally, to have some questions about what's really going on behind the scenes in the Ukrainian government, because not everyone can be resigning because they're doing something wrong. Some of these people could be resigning because they don't like something the Ukrainian government is doing behind the scenes that we really don't know about a lot here on air. We have seen the commanders of different brigades at different times in the past have ended up resigning as well due to publicly stated grievances they had with upper command or the Ukrainian government itself and how they have been trying to deal with the war. So we don't really know why these people are leaving the government or being forced to leave the government, but it does seem a little bit questionable, at least in the terms of the volume and the number at which they're starting to leave at this point. And also I see some people saying why people could get fired, but and some people are saying maybe they're worn out. I would say that could be a possibility. Maybe they are worn out, but the problem is that generally no one ever quits their position like that during wartime. Like, for example, when General Eisenhower was appointed the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, he was the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe from when he assumed that position to when the war ended in Europe. And General MacArthur was the same in the Pacific. You didn't really see them getting rotated out to go be the ambassador to Britain or anything like that. They just ended up being in that position until the end of the war. Like, for example, here in America during the U.S. Civil War, the Secretary of War at the time, Edward Stanton, was the Secretary of War from day one of the Civil War up until the very end of the Civil War. And then he ended up being the Secretary of War after Lincoln died and Andrew Johnson became president, as he administered the military districts that the southern United States had been divvied up into for years after the Civil War. And we didn't see him really getting removed. The only time that we've ever seen people getting removed or dismissed is when their performance has been considered unsatisfactory in a military position, and in a governmental position during wartime, it's generally quite rare. It was actually considered incredibly bizarre that right at the end of World War II, Winston Churchill got ousted as Prime Minister in the United Kingdom, and Clement Attlee ended up becoming the Prime Minister during the last few months of World War II. That was actually considered a pretty big upset, because up until that point, really everyone who was in a position of power or a position of responsibility in most Western governments during World War II rarely ever got removed or replaced with anyone else. You know, of course, the Soviets are a different picture because they were purging people all the time for disloyalty and all those things. But once again, the Soviets were the only outlier in the war. They were the ones who generally had issues with disloyalty. And it wasn't necessarily that these people were wrong. It's just that sometimes they disagreed because they thought that what the Soviet government was doing wasn't really the best thing to do, and then they would end up ousting them or purging them for that reason. So I don't really know. We're not entirely sure. And also, some people are saying maybe it could be another corruption purge. Maybe. I mean, I don't mean to, like, fear monger with this whole thing and all that, but we don't really know. I mean, it could be that this is all about corruption. It could be that there's things going on that we just don't know about. Like Dmytro Kubala may have ended up going on that trip to China without the authorization of Zelensky, although that'd be really bizarre if that was the case. And now, because of that, there's been these massive rows behind the scene about what kind of direction Ukraine will be taking post-war, a Chinese direction or an American direction, and now he's being fired because he wants to pursue a Chinese direction. Or it could be the fact that, just going off of this one instance, it could be a flip, because we don't really know. It could be that Kubala was told by Zelensky to go to China, Kubala wants to take an American path, Zelensky wants to take a Chinese path, and because of this difference, Kubala is going to be removed and replaced with someone else. We just don't really know. We have no clue what direction this is really going in. We would really need a lot more info on this at the moment, but we have seen that a lot of y'all have been talking about this as well and seem to be kind of unsure about it too. It's just a black hole, really. We know the end result, but we don't really know what led to all of this to actually happen. Because sources have claimed that the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kubala is to be fired, and an additional 3 other Ukrainian ministers of the Verkhovna Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, have resigned. And a lot of people are really wondering what's going on. And a lot of people seem to be wanting a lot more info on this because it's very unclear what's actually happening. But Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about this as well?
All right, so we are getting word from Ruslan Stefanchuk, who is the very tough-looking fella, who is actually I believe, the chair of the Verkhovna Rada, I believe. He said that he's received resignations from the Minister of Strategic Industries of Ukraine, as well as the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Environmental Protection, and also the Chairman of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. So, in addition to that, we've heard that the Foreign Minister Kuleba will be on the way out as well. So, quite a large ousting here. So, what is going on? So, 48% said only time will tell and we need more info, while 29% said they were corrupt or bad in some way, and about 8% said they were wrongfully forced out. Now, one thing I will say is the first thing that popped in my mind was, I wonder if these people were basically forced out because they disagreed with the current administration. That is a possibility. However, if they were that opposed to what Zelensky was doing, it seems like they might have made a stand, and instead of voluntarily resigning, they might have forced Zelensky to fire them so that way they can make a statement. But in this case, they voluntarily resigned and they're leaving on their own accord. So I'm not really sure what's going on here, but only time will tell. And I'm not sure if the info will ever come out from the Ukrainian government, but maybe we'll hear from an insider why this happened, because this is a very large shakeup and there has to be a reason for it. And that reason could be of some importance to the West. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm not entirely sure. We need more info. I was really trying to float a lot of options to all of y'all about what could have happened, because we have so little information, we don't really know. But one thing I'm seeing a lot of people are saying, well, wasn't MacArthur removed during the Korean War? Yes, he was. But he was removed because he wanted to start nuking the North Koreans, and he specifically wanted to nuke, I believe it is called the Yalu River, if I'm correct. And let me make sure to check that. Yeah, the Yalu River. He wanted to use something like 50 nuclear bombs, or atomic bombs at the time, to nuke pretty much the entirety of the Yalu River and make it uncrossable for the Chinese, so that way they could continue to crush the North Koreans, and the Chinese couldn't get involved. And Truman, who was the president at the time, said, MacArthur, I've never heard it put that way before. You're crazy. I'm removing you. And then that's why he got removed. But the thing about that, though, is that he didn't end up getting removed just because, I guess it's just time to remove him. He got removed because he was going bat crap crazy and was wanting to just use nuclear weapons like candy. And Truman and MacArthur disagreed about that heavily, and I kind of watered it down a little bit as well, because MacArthur started to get belligerent with Truman and started to pretty much say that it should be done, and he thinks it's going to happen whether Truman wants it to happen or not. And at that point, that's getting along the lines of insubordination, so then he removed MacArthur and had him replaced. But that is an outlier, and once again, that's getting into the situation of MacArthur and Truman had a disagreement, and they couldn't agree, and so the guy in charge, who's Truman, has the guy who cannot agree, MacArthur, removed. And so that's kind of the same thing that we're maybe seeing in Ukraine. We don't really know. Because it could be that.
And honestly, that sounds natural. That sounds natural because if somebody that's of lower like status than the president decides, oh, we're going to go this way, and the president wants to go a different way, well, the president is in a bit of a quandary there. They can either keep the person around, they could decide to start basically being insubordinate and trying to usurp their wishes, or they could get rid of the person. But the catch is, with this large of a pool of people being ousted at the same time, that is that is a bit concerning. Well, I nearly choked on my spit here, but that is a big concerning with the ministers being all ousted like that at the same time. And not just the ministers, but also the foreign minister Kuleba as well, which is a very high-profile person in the government.
Yeah, also, the ministers aren't being ousted, they're resigning, which usually resignation shows that you have such a strong disagreement with something. That's just usually what you take from a resignation. That person has such a strong disagreement with something that's about to be done or something that is being done that they no longer even want to work in the government because they can't even stand for it or even continue to work knowing that that's going on, which is something that usually a resignation means. You don't see a lot of people resigning just because, oh, well, I don't know. Because these people are working this as a job. This is how they make money. They get paid to work in the Ukrainian government. So it's not really like you just go, oh, I think I want to take a vacation. I resign. And it's not like you can get the position back. It's not like you're going on holiday. You're quitting permanently. And so, it kind of begs the question, what in the world is going on with that? And also I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, it's just clean house. And a lot of people are going with the positive side of things, what you might be able to get out of it. But at the same time, we don't know what's going on. I mean, a lot of people would like to assume the best, but we have no clue, and no one's really being that open or transparent at all about this that's going on, and it keeps happening over and over and over, and we still don't really have a clue what's happening. And so that's how I would have to say. That's what I would have to say. That's my piece on it. And with that, we are now going to be moving on.
Do you think they get severance pay? Do you think the ministers get severance pay if they head out like that? Do they get a little bit of a bonus on the way out the door?
I have no clue. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I mean, well, I'm not really sure.
I'm not sure, man. I just wonder. if you resign from the Ukrainian government, do you get any benefits or anything like that? I wonder.
I mean, who knows? I mean, can someone answer that? Like, does someone actually have the answer for that? Do they actually get any kind of severance or retirement pay or anything like that? I would assume they probably do. But, we'll never really know. Also, I got to say this tonight because this is getting extreme. No politics in the chat. Like we do not accept domestic politics as a talking point on this channel. And from this point forward tonight, usually we're not this extreme with this, but if a political comment is made at all, a partisan political comment saying I like so-and-so or I hate so-and-so, that is going to be ground snipe. Is getting so out of hand for instant bans because it's getting crazy. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's just the influx of bots, but we're not going to start turning this into a partisan politics channel where people turn it into Brawlhalla or the Thunderdome here in the live chat. So if you want to talk politics, there's a million other YouTube channels out there that pick a political side and you can talk about politics until your face turns blue. But this is the only channel on the internet where that's not the case. So if you want to talk politics, you're going to have to talk it elsewhere, but it's not going to be here. And so with that, I hope that kind of lays out the ground rules the best I can for everyone, because I'm seeing a lot of people continuously coming in and saying, I like this person, vote for them, or I hate this person and they're the worst. I don't really care because that's not what this channel is about. But moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we did get to see the Ukrainians launching an 82mm mortar today, the whole mortar, and also some trap remix. And so we can see the mortar rounds right here. We can see them loading it. And boom, and there goes the round. Really cool to see. Really neat to know that they're still out there doing that sort of thing. We also got to see the Russians claim that the Ukrainians have developed an electronic fuse with a LiDAR rangefinder. This allows precision airbursts for drone drop munitions, and a LiDAR targets a surface with a laser and measures the time for reflected light to return to the receiver. So it's a laser rangefinder pretty much, but that's pretty cool to see. Pretty neat that they're starting to make them inside of Ukraine, and hopefully this will be making their drone ordnance a lot more effective. But moving on from that into our next bit of Location Unknown news, we also got to see the Ukrainian Varta 2. This thing actually has a BTR-4 turret on top of it and is an armored car. The best of both worlds.
Man, I like that. I like those fender arches they put on that thing, by the way. It looks pretty sick. Also, that's a nice gun, like turret on top of that. I like that.
man, I gotta tell you, this thing be fleek. I mean, I really like it. I respect it, honestly. And I hope that we get to see these things out there a little bit more frequently. But moving on from that little bit of news right there and into our next bit, we also got to see a little bit of a jank artillery piece from the Russians. Another one of those Urals with like the naval mine laying system or depth charge system. And they seem to be using these a little bit more again, showing that they're running out of conventional artillery systems. Fairly interesting to note. Meanwhile, we also got another little bit of news that the Ukrainians are modifying BTR-60s, and I mean heavily modifying them into these. Let me show y'all what a BTR-60 looks like, so that way y'all could truly appreciate the massive upgrade that this thing went through to get to this condition that we see here in this picture. That is what is actually underneath this thing.
That's it. What? Let's see the other picture. And let's see the other one again. Huh, so it's really just a hunk.
It's a hunk, but they pretty much removed the entire hull and used the chassis to modify this thing into a heavily upgraded BTR-60. It's supposed to have improved crew survivability. It's supposed to have improved infantry compartment survivability. It also has mounted smoke grenade launchers. Uses the same main gun as a 14.5mm machine gun, but still, it's up-armored enough that it has a higher survivability rate. So pretty interesting to see. It's really a night and day difference in the vehicle. And also it has an improved height infantry compartment, making dismounting and mounting a lot easier for the troops. And also, instead of having the side loading doors, it actually has a rear loading door instead. So that is incredibly cool. It looks kind of like a Rosamac, and I cannot wait to see the Ukrainians start to introduce these, hopefully in much larger numbers as the war goes on, because they have a pretty decent kind of a decent little bit of an amount of BTR-60s that they could currently refit, and so hopefully we'll get to see those refitted as time goes by. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report as well, and oh, by golly, what a casualty report.
Oh my God! We crossed over 3,000 Bobcats. Do you see this? The 3,002 Bobcats, plus 9 special equipment. I love to see it. We have hit the 3,000 mark that I've been waiting for ages. I have to say, we don't have a huge celebration plan for tonight, sadly. This came a lot quicker than I was expecting, but this is a tremendous occasion right here, I must say. The 3,000 mark has been coming for ages. I've been talking about this for about a week now, so I'm glad to see it. But Enforcer, tell us more.
Man, and yippee! 1,360 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 35 APCs, 47 supply trucks, 10 main battle tanks, 18 artillery pieces, 36 drones, 21 cruise missiles, and 9 Bobcat skid steers. The losses were walkie slash. That thing bleeding be. And moving on from that and over into the Lipsy area, we also got to see a tank getting destroyed with FPV drones. Check this out. And here comes the drone right onto the roof of this tank. It looks like a T-80. Boom! Hits dead on. Ammunition immediately detonates. Call that thing a cook-off, because it's cooking.
Now it's a smoker.
Man, that thing do be smoking. Dang, what an outro. I thought the thing like went nuclear or something. But with that, that's the end of the clip. Really neat to see. And moving on from that and into our next one around Kharkiv, we also get to see the Ukrainians shooting down a Shahed overnight. And we're going to be muting that. Sounds like they're playing some documentary music. One of those documentary songs that plays on, like, the Border Patrol documentaries. They found a suitcase with an incredibly interesting kind of an opening. And when they opened it, they found out it was a suitcase. And then it goes to, like, the British guy who's, like, there at the border thing. He's like, you see here, they had an interesting suitcase. You see, it actually could open with a combination, like, possibly showing they're trying to hide something here. Something like that. But very nice to see they're able to...
Oh, man, they found the blow.
Aw, man, they found my fine stash of Peruvian blow. Aw, man. And we also got to see that the Ukrainians started dropping incendiaries on the Russians. Look at this. Toasting much? Homeschool much? Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. Oh, man. And we see the drone flying on through. And there it goes. It's just burning a little bit of thermite over the trees.
Is that like...
Ooh, you might cut out really bad there.
I said, is that like seasoning or something? It's like throwing some Frank's Red Hot on top of that.
Man, it's better than Frank's Red Hot. This is like that Carolina Reaper with the chili. You know that, dude?
Man, could you imagine a little bit of that landing on your head? That might be painful.
Man, that might be a little hot. Bro, I'm telling you, man, that's better than Red Hot, though.
Man, turn him right into a hothead.
Oh. Dude, it just keeps on flying around. It's just dropping.
Now,
Man, it's just dropping it off.
I'm surprised it's not like starting a forest fire or something like that.
I think that's kind of supposed to be the point of this thing, but yeah, it's not really starting to fire at all. Oh.
Oh.
Did the thermite grenade just blow up or something? Yeah, it did, apparently. Well, that's new. Well, neat fireworks show. Oh, and Servo Divergent, it burns through everything. That's the thing about thermite, you see. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip around Vovchansk, we also got to see some Ukrainians defending their trench in this area. Check it out. It's something. Popping off those shots. Oh. Ooh. Popping off some more shots. Oh, this guy's got a little suppressor.
Перезарядка. Давай.
And sadly, we're going to have to cut this off at the halfway mark right here because it is 10:50 right now. We're starting to go overtime with our news segment, and we still have a lot of news to cover from multiple different areas. So if y'all want to see the entirety of this clip, we won't be able to show it here, but y'all can click on the link in the description below for the day 923 map and go and watch it there. On the map, because you can see every single clip we have that's posted today so far. But moving on from that and down towards Svatove, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier winning a sniper duel here. The Russian sniper tried to snipe him, but he sniped him back. There's our Russian sniper right here. There goes the bullet flying right at the Ukrainian. It missed him. Miss. Now it's his turn. So check this out. Boom, and blink. Oh, he lost. What do you know? What are the odds? Oh. Oh. Pretty good hit. Anyways, moving on from that and into our next clips, a little bit further on down the line, we did have a pretty interesting little look at a new Azov Humvee being used by the Azov around the Severonsky Forest. This thing goes hard. It's one of the ambulance Humvees that's been fitted out to be an ambulance Humvee. Crazy, right? Like, it's almost like it's purpose-built for the job. And we also got to see a little bit of an MTLB in the forest as well. Check out this. Look at this little MTLB and the cope cage that they put it in and the little anti-drone gun they had there. It's beautiful. It's wonderful stuff. We love to see it. And moving on from that and further on down, we also got to see the 4th Rubish Brigade engaging and destroying Russian forces in the area around Makivka, it claims, but the 4th Brigade is still south of Kurdimivka, so we know that somewhere around this area. And of course, much like the last clip, this one's 7 minutes long, so we won't be able to play the entirety of it, but we'll be able to show a good bit of it. And it's trying to lay down that lead.
Oh, I hear a little drone.
Сейчас скидывает, походу.
We're gonna have to mute it as well because the music's getting loud enough. Content ID might hear it. And we see them looking around the sky. They're looking for the drone, trying to see where in the world it even is. We see him shooting down into the trench in front of him. Something along those lines. Yeah. And we see them fire, getting on in there pretty much.
I see someone in the live chat has caused a little stir. It's going to be a bad stir because it looks like the chat is getting angry.
Well, it happens, I guess, from time to time. We see them continuing to fight in this area. And at this point, we're going to have to round out the clip. But still, it was very interesting footage of how the 4th Brigade had been fighting in this area. I would highly recommend y'all go check it out. But moving on down into the area of Huilipol, we also get to see the 100th Brigade engaging and taking out Russian forces in this area as well. Check it out. We're going to be muting that. Copyrighted music is no bueno on this channel.
Look at these birds.
Man, those are some birds, man. Some crows even. Maybe even ravens.
This is the Cursed Empire.
Man, I think it's just Cursed that MTLB right there. Dang! That was a pretty solid hit. And we see the Russians running for the hills. They all bailed out. And now it looks like they're getting lit up by small arms fire, actually. Not a good thing. Not a good combination right there. We see them hitting a BTR. Boom! Right there, down the nail. Knocking out that BTR. Beautiful to see. Whoa. Look at that boiler. You're about to turn this thing into a boiler right here. Look at this. Boom! Dead on the nail. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, and one hell of a thing to see. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of the southern front and on up to Kyiv, where it's time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 923 of the war. And so without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Could we please have some speech? Could we please get some extra long speech? Long-lasting speech.
And it really is long-lasting speech. And so without further ado, here it is.
Дорогі українці, українки, передусім щодо трагедії в Полтаві, рятувальні роботи зараз ще тривають, розбирають завали, залучені всі служби. Станом на цей час кількість поранених 271. Усім надається необхідна допомога. Я вдячний усім рятувальникам, лікарям, медичним сестрам, всім полтавчанам, хто долучився до допомоги, здавав кров, хто підтримує. Відомо, що під завалами зруйнованої будівлі є люди. Робиться все, щоб врятувати якнайбільше життів. За наявною зараз інформацією, цей російський удар вбив 51 людину. Мої співчуття всім рідним та близьким. Правоохоронні органи та Міністерство оборони України з'ясовують всі обставини цієї трагедії. Цей удар росіяни здійснили 2 балістичними ракетами. Сигнал повітряної тривоги був. Все інше, кожну деталь мають встановити і перевірити під час розслідування. Сьогодні провів засідання Ставки. Предметно говорили і про застосування ППО, про захист наших міст і громад, визначення кроків для того, щоб зробити більш ефективним застосування систем, які у нас вже є. Ми працюємо і над тим, щоб отримати для України додатковий захист. Дуже розраховуємо на Петріот, який готується передати Румунії. Вдячний буду за цей крок допомоги від Румунії. Це те, що дійсно підтримає наших людей, нашу країну, увесь наш регіон. Звичайно, ми продовжуємо працювати з усіма партнерами заради більш сильних рішень на підтримку нашого захисту, заради далекобійних рішень, які могли би знищити ще до старту значну частину російської балістики. Це одне з ключових питань цієї війни взагалі. Питання нашої далекобійності, відповідних дозволів від партнерів, далекобійних снарядів та ракет, які ми могли би використовувати. Російські удари будуть неможливі, якщо для нас буде можливо знищувати пускові установки окупанта там, де вони є, та російські військові аеродроми і логістику. Дати Україні такі дозволи, таку зброю – це зробити точно найбільший крок до реального, справедливого завершення цієї війни. Росія просто не вміє воювати без терору. Саме терористичні удари та здатність сіяти руїни замінює російському керівництву і тактику, і стратегію війни. Говорив сьогодні з прем'єр-міністром Канади. Поінформував про ситуацію на полі бою, про наслідки російського терору. Ми обговорили, що саме може зміцнити наші позиції, ППО, оборонні пакети, потреби в техніці. І дуже важливо, що Джастін готовий як активніше переконувати партнерів дати Україні більше далекобійності. Також сьогодні на Ставці були важливі доповіді щодо дронів, різних видів дронів, які застосовують наші Збройні Сили України, СБУ, ГУР. Ефективність застосування, пріоритети. Є досвід, який варто поширювати, є і помилки, які треба виправити. Наші українські дрони мають бути на 100% ефективними, бо це буквально означає, що Україна буде на 100% ефективною на полі бою. Я дякую всім нашим людям, які здобувають для України цей позитивний досвід застосування дронів, які поширюють досвід у військах. Дякую кожному, хто виробляє і постачає дрони. Дякую усім, хто дійсно влучно знищує окупанта та знищує російський потенціал війни. Саме там, на території ворога. Була і тривала доповідь головкома Сирського щодо фронту та операції в Курській області. Покровський напрямок є рішення, щоб зміцнити позиції. Активні дії на Курщині продовжують поповнювати обмінний фонд для нашої держави. І ще одне. Осінь буде надзвичайно важливою для України. І наші державні інституції мають бути налаштовані так, щоб Україна досягла усіх результатів, які нам потрібні. Всім нам. Для цього ми маємо посилити деякі напрямки в уряді і підготовлені кадрові рішення. Також будуть зміни в офісі. Я розраховую і на дещо іншу вагу окремих напрямків нашої зовнішньої і внутрішньої політики. Перше, треба більше взаємодії між центральною владою і громадами. Особливо зараз, у час підготовки до зимового сезону. Друге, Україна вже досягла значних результатів в оборонному виробництві. І це треба посилювати на всіх рівнях. Зокрема так, щоб було простіше залучати інвестиції партнерів в наші стратегічні галузі промисловості. Третє, маємо значно посилити нашу роботу з НАТО. Для цього потрібна особлива взаємодія. Четверте, Євросоюз. Реальні переговори щодо членства. Підготовка відповідних частин майбутньої угоди щодо членства. Це дуже чітка, одночасна і юридична, і політична робота. За неї буде персональна відповідальність. І п'яте, треба поєднати все, що Україна досягла у відносинах з партнерами довіру до України, силу українського духу, відносини з партнерами і ті завдання, які є перед нашою державою в протидії російській пропаганді, а також у захисті української культурної спадщини. Нам потрібен новий рівень одночасно інформаційної роботи, культурної та дипломатичної, і новий рівень відносин з глобальною українською спільнотою. Зараз час дати нові сили урядовим інституціям України. Я вдячний усім, хто допомагатиме. Слава Україні!
And Ram Slava.
Herom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 923 of the war. And with that, that is moving us on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And it's an incredibly fun segment because we get to talk about literally anything and everything. And it's always the funnest. Always the greatest. And honestly, it's the part of the show I look forward to the most because we really get to talk about anything and everything at this point. But if you're getting on this stream right now for news, I gotta tell you, you're a little late. You're just about an hour, or 2 hours late, actually. The news started about 2 hours ago, ended about 30 seconds ago. So if you come in here and you go, where's the news? It was for a whole 2 hours. So just rewind, but don't expect me to start rehashing the news because at this point, we're here to talk to y'all. And I'm here for it, 100%. I love it. And so with that, and Melody 16040 said, trains! I'm going to be trying to curtail that tonight, unless if someone like specifically requests it in like a super chat or a live chat or something, then I will go into it. But I'm going to give everyone a little bit of a break from the whole train thing because, I don't want people to get too burned out on one topic. We want to make it a little bit broad, like try and make sure to cover some different topics possibly. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so it's now time for the final question segment of the night, the most highly anticipated part of the stream, and we currently have one poll to get to, and it says, Ukraine argues that Mongolia should have arrested Putin under an ICC warrant upon arrival in their country. He just arrived there yesterday to try to negotiate the opening of a pipeline deal, and what are your thoughts on that? So 44% said Putin should have been arrested by Mongolia, while 38% said that's very unrealistic to try to actually arrest Putin in Mongolia, and 13% said save it for when Putin gets ousted from the Russian government. And on this one, I gotta say, I'm going to be sort of in the unpopular opinion here. It's really unrealistic to actually try to arrest Putin for several different reasons. First of all, Putin does go around with a lot of security. If the Mongolian authorities try to show up and then arrest Putin under an ICC warrant, that would likely end in gunfire and a lot of dead people who are trying to protect Mongolia and also trying to protect Putin. Also, they would probably never get him. He'd probably get on the plane and be out of there. Number two, that would start a war between Mongolia and Russia, which is also not very realistic either to ask Mongolia to do that. So it's really not realistic to do that at the moment. Of course, we all want him arrested. He needs to get arrested, but this is not the time to do it. And also, Mongolia invited him to the country, so why would they arrest him? That wouldn't make any sense. So I'm actually with the 38%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it would be infeasible to arrest Putin. It would be unrealistic. Also, on top of that, a state visit like this does not happen without the government of Mongolia knowing. That's something that a lot of people seem to be kind of glossing over when talking about this, is that Putin just doesn't go, I think I'm going to take a vacation to Mongolia. And then he just shows up in Mongolia. And then the Mongolian government's like, oh my God, vacuum the carpets, get the pillows on the couch, Putin's here. It's not like that. This is a pre-planned thing well in advance. And so the Mongolian government had the Russian government maybe request a visit, and then the Mongolian government approved it. So they're not going to sit there and voluntarily approve Putin's visit and then go, it'd be funny, let's arrest him when he shows up. They're not going to do that because whenever you're invited to a country, it's largely assumed that there's diplomatic goodwill. There's always an assumed amount of diplomatic goodwill there, and so he wouldn't end up getting arrested because it was a mutual thing for him to go to Mongolia, at least for the Mongolians. Another thing is that while they're a part of the ICC much like any other organization, is largely useless because they don't have any actual enforceable power. They rely on the countries that make up the ICC to actually enforce what the ICC wants them to do. And if Mongolia doesn't want to arrest them, they don't have to arrest them. And on top of that, like Matthew said, there's a lot of logistical issues with arresting Putin because they would have to kill his entire entourage of bodyguards. That would be a pretty provocative action in the eyes of the Russian government. They would probably treat Putin like a hostage. The Russian government would probably treat the arresting of Putin like a hostage situation. And not only that, how in the world do you actually extradite Putin from Mongolia to a ICC court and have him tried? All the logistics of this is next to impossible. That's also why when they put out the arrest warrant on Netanyahu, it doesn't mean anything because it's not like Netanyahu's going to travel to a country just unprompted and then they'll arrest him out of the blue. Like, obviously, he's not going to Turkey anytime soon, just to put that out there. So I would say it's going to be pretty much infeasible to ever arrest him, and so for all of those reasons and that's why I would say he was not arrested. And so with that, I hope that does...
Also, I'm afraid that if you wield an army, even though the Russian army is quite pitiful at this point, he also wields nuclear weapons. And the truth is, the reality of arresting a world leader, because Putin is a devil, but he still is a world leader in Russia right now, that is just totally unrealistic. Because for example, let's say that Mongolia was able to take out the entire security team. They took Putin into custody somehow, which is probably not going to happen in the first place. But let's say they did. Where do you go from there? Because obviously Russia is not going to suddenly say, "Oh, that's fine, take Putin. We're just going to move on from here." I really doubt they're going to say that because there are people loyal to Putin, even though he is a devil and ruining the whole country of Russia. They are still loyal to him, so they would probably start threatening Mongolia. If you don't release him within 24 hours, we're about to launch a missile at your country, and they probably would because that would be actually somewhat warranted in that circumstance because Russia is going to defend their leader under that circumstance. So it's just not realistic, to be honest. And also, like the enforcer was saying, the ICC relies on countries to actually do the enforcing. So, when you have countries like Mongolia out there who are faced with potentially going up against the entire country of Russia, that's just not realistic whatsoever. So, until Putin gets ousted from his government seat in Russia and is out of the favor of the Russian government, he'll probably never get arrested. Probably ever, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I just don't think this will ever happen, to be entirely honest with everyone. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and it's time for us to get on into those questions. And what do we have, Matthew?
So our first one here goes to Fachada, who puts in a $50 donation. Hey! And huge shout out to you, Fachada, for that massive support. And I don't see a comment attached to it here, but let me go back and take a look under the fan funding section. And let's see here what type of super sticker was with it. It was a YouTube Doge creature, the Shiba Inu, jumping up into the sky with the fireworks, and it was going berserk. And thank you very much, Fachada, for that support. We appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Fachada, and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but we love to see the Shiba Inu with its bitty arms jumping up into the air and waving around in the fireworks. It's a beautiful sight. It's absolutely incredible. And I gotta thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. And I gotta give a huge thanks to you for that, because not a lot of people support this channel in reality out of all of our viewers. Like tonight so far, we had 10,600 people here at the peak, which is actually pretty high. And out of all of those people, and out of about the 60,000 people who have watched this stream so far, there's only been about, I think, 20 to 25 super chatters out of that 60,000 people or so. And those 20 or so super chatters make this entire channel possible for Matthew and me to run and make a living off of and do it as a job, and for about 60,000 people or about 150,000 people every single stream to be able to watch and get their news every single day. And that's the kind of impact that your support is having, Fachada, on helping this channel to keep on running and helping hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people a month, to be able to get their news. I got to thank you massively for that support, because it will help us to keep this thing rolling, and it will help us to keep on making this news a reality. And so with that, I got to say, thank you so much once again for that support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to William Watson, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, William, for your support as well. He said, after 5 or 6 days of jonesing for some Matt and Enforcer Matt broadcast, hopefully we'll get some really, really up-close info in the Ukraine war.
And yeah, thank you so much for the support, William Watson. And Matthew, do you know what jonesing around means?
Not around. Said jonesing. Said I was wondering if they said after 5 to 6 days of joining for some broadcast. I was wondering if that's what they meant.
Um, I'm not really sure. Maybe that is what it means. But beyond that, I wish we could get some up close details on the Ukraine war. But sadly, we kind of just have to work with what we have. And up close details are usually classified, and so we don't really get a lot of access to that out here in the public. It's something really more so that the U.S. government would get up-close information and data on, but we wouldn't really. And sometimes people ask questions that are great questions. Problem is that we just don't have enough data or information to be able to answer the questions accurately, and that ends up kind of putting a hamper. Some people complain about that we don't have an answer to every question, but I feel like it's a better thing to not have an answer to every question than to act like I have an answer to every question when I don't. But I still thank you so much once again for the support, William Watson, and helping this channel to keep on running and supporting it, because if it was not for folks like you who enjoyed this channel greatly and supported it to help us keep this thing running, we wouldn't be able to get the news and information that we get right now and to be able to keep this channel running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make it possible for so far. And with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And let's see, someone said jonesing, someone said, Michael Murphy said, jonesing definition, an addict going through withdrawal. And then someone said, jonesing is like, I really want it, I need it. So they were looking for some broadcast real bad here. They were fiending for the broadcast, almost like the hot dog man fiends for that white powder. But anyways, thank you, William, for the kind words. And I hope we delivered what you were looking for. And thank you very much for your support as well. So moving on to our next super chat here, we have one from Hal Rose, who puts in a $33 donation. And thank you, Hal, as well, for that very generous support. And he said, Enforcer Matt, I signed on early tonight and was a viewer number 3,331. Hey, let's go. He said, I was the one, and I was the one. And also pick a question, please.
Hey, and welcome on tonight, Hal Rose, channel legend, old god as well. Have a seat, welcome in. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel tonight. Thank you for being on a little bit early. You were number 3,331. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't know exactly where that puts you in the running. Let me go see where that would be specifically, or as my mom says, specifically. So let me see if I can find it. Details. Okay, it's not there. So let's see. You would have joined around, let's see, 1, 11, 12. So you would have joined around the 13-minute mark of the stream, because that's when we had about 3,300 people on. We actually had 3,420 people on at that point, but still, potato, almost the same thing. That's pretty early to get on. You got on, I think, right when the intro ended and we had started going over like the general overview of the news for that night. And I gotta thank you so much for being here that early tonight and really enjoying this channel and supporting it so that way you can keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you who always enjoyed this channel and always supported it and helped it to keep on running, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't have been able to keep this thing running, and for that, I thank you massively, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to be here for this long. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we will make sure to get a live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat question is going to go to Purple Gerbil, who says, does Ukrainian artillery fight as batteries or individual guns?
Ukrainian artillery does operate on a battery level, but when we see them specifically working out on the field, they usually operate as individual guns, but they all fall under the command of a battery commander. So they operate at the battery level, but they still individually operate as separate guns on the field. That's probably the best way that I can explain how they run their artillery. But I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running once again and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Live Laugh Toaster Bath, who puts in a $31 donation. And thank you very much, Live Laugh Toaster, for that support as always. And they said, good evening, Enforcers, and good evening to you. They said that thanks to yourselves and the LSA as a whole for the birthday love. And have you guys had a look at the findings of the commission who reviewed the National Defense Strategy of 2022 and LSA
And I thank you so much for the support. Live, laugh, toaster, bath. And also, once again, congratulations on having a happy birthday. I hope you had a great one. And I thank you so much for saying that you love to see all the birthday love. We love to see it being dished around to everyone who's having a birthday here in the LSA. And also, I haven't looked at the people who reviewed the National Defense Strategy of 2022. I haven't seen anything specifically about that at the moment. So unfortunately, I have to largely declare ignorance on that for now, because it's just something that hasn't been in my niche or something that I've been having to read lately. Mostly, I've been having to read about the Chinese, Russia, and Ukraine, and then also in the Middle East. So I haven't looked at the general overview. I've just kind of looked at the overview in separate regions. So I would have to declare ignorance on that at the moment right now. But I do thank you so much once again for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. But before we move on from that, I've seen something that Matthew addressed. I'm going to have to address it again, because we try and make this stream a little bit more fun for everyone by throwing out jokes. Sometimes those jokes include doing the voices of other people. And one thing that we do when we make those jokes is we make fun of the people who do those voices. Because it wouldn't really be funny if I did a 1-for-1, or if Matthew did a 1-for-1 voice impersonation of someone and something that they said exactly. That wouldn't really be that funny. And so we try and make it a little bit more comedic. It's what's called a joke. And we do the voice, but we say something that we think would get y'all to laugh. Does that mean that we hate that person and we're mocking them? No. It means that we're trying to make y'all laugh by making a joke about someone that y'all all know about. Because we have done voices on all kinds of people, just to say their names outright. David Attenborough, Mike Tyson, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, RFK Jr., let's see, let me think of others, Sam Elliott, let's see, Rodney Dangerfield.
Sam Elliott.
Yeah, we've done literally about 10 different voices, and we say different things doing the voices, because we're supposed to be trying to make y'all laugh. That's kind of one of the goals of this channel. And so when we do that, I'm so sorry that some of y'all, for some reason, it's a very small group of people, but there's always some people who appear to be in a cult, specifically around the political voices that we do, because we'll do a political voice and we'll make the same kind of jokes that we would about other people, like Rodney Dangerfield or Sam Elliott. And they're jokes that are kind of a little bit more toned to that specific person, and then someone wants to be offended by the joke. I'm terribly sorry that you're too weak to take the joke. I'm not going to take our jokes back. I saw someone once again get offended about the RFK voice. The RFK voice is what it is. He talks like that. For us to impersonate the guy, we have to talk like him. So if you don't like the joke, I'm sorry, but that you're just going to have to live with it. Because I'm getting, like, I'm kind of getting a little bit tired of people coming in here and every voice is fine and funny except for the voice that we make about the specific political person that they might like. Because we do it fairly to every single political person out there that is running or was running, and then people want to make a specific problem and be specifically offended about the voice of the candidate they like. It's supposed to be a joke, so if you can't take a joke, that's not my problem. I just want to put that out there because I'm getting really tired of having to see Matthew go around and address people who are being specifically offended by voices. I'm not going to stop doing them. He isn't going to stop doing them. So I would either get used to it or not, one or the other. But anyways,
I'm not allowed to stop doing them. I'm being compelled to do the voice. I'm being compelled.
Yeah, and I know, like, I'm so sorry tonight, everyone. I've been having to make specific points to say things and address things, but for some reason I'm seeing in the chat these days that there's a small group of people, a very small group, but they're very vocal, that are continuously saying goofy things. Like, they're trying to put their political opinions out when we've said time and time again that that won't work here. And then people want to start getting offended about voices that we're doing. And at some point, it gets to a point that it annoys me enough. I'm like, I'm going to have to make a point to mention this, because I'm not going to have people continuously coming in here and having people think that they have a right to tell us how to run our show. Like if someone doesn't like the voices that we're doing on our show, I highly encourage you to go make your own show and then not do voices on your own show. But this is our show. And it seems like a lot of y'all have enjoyed the way we've run it so far, and I'm not going to go and bend the way we've been doing this for 3 years because like 3 people in the live chat out of the thousands that are watching right now don't like a specific voice that we're doing because it's funny and because a lot of people laugh about it. So with that, I hope I covered that base as best I can. Because you know, I gotta be honest. Some people with their complaints, it's getting a little bit outlandish at this point. I'm not gonna have people writing in like it's the Johnny Carson show, going, "Oh, how dare you!" Because we do what we do. I'm not going to back off of anything that we do. We've thought it out before we do it. We think it's funny. If you don't like it, there's other channels. And there's a lot of other sad ones out there. You know, ones that cry a lot, ones that never do voices, one that take themselves too seriously. There's a lot of them like that. So if you want to go to those, be my guest. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and jumping into our next super chat here, we have 2 of them. We have 2 of them from GunFox61, the longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, GunFox, for throwing in those 2 $20 supports. We appreciate it very much. And the first one here says, also, let me make sure I'm reading them in the correct order here. I believe I am. The first one says, 1939, Britain and France declare war on Germany, and 1783, Treaty of Paris signed. 1777, the Stars and Stripes flies in a battle for the first time. 1943, Allies invade Italian mainland. And then the 2nd of September, 1945, Japan surrenders, bringing an end to World War II abroad. Aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, Japan formally surrenders to the Allies, bringing an end to the World War II. And 31 BC, jumping back a long time ago, the Battle of Actium in 1666. A Great Fire of London begins.
Dang, today's a day. Today really is a day in history. Probably one of the most eventful ones that you've put out so far. And I got to thank you for the massive support, by the way, GunFox61, and throwing in all of this in the day of history, because it is really, like, it really is a day. I didn't even know all of this fell really on the same days. But 1939, Britain and France both declared war on Germany, and that means that by this point, Germany had been at war with Poland, I think, for about a week or 2, and was steamrolling them at this time. And then this is when Britain and France entered the phony war not long after that, and then they just sat around and waited and did nothing. Although there was a lot more to it than that. They called it the phony war during that period. Another interesting thing, let's see here. 1783, the Treaty of Paris signed. Interestingly enough, for all of our American viewers, that treaty in 1783 was what formally created the United States of America as a recognized country. Because in the Treaty of Paris, the United Kingdom, or the British Empire at the time, had to recognize the independence of the 13 colonies from the United Kingdom. So it was literally, by all measures, a defeat for the British, a victory for the Americans. Something very rarely seen most times in any kind of a peace agreement, where one side pretty much got all of its demands. And not only that, Britain then ceded all of the territories up to the Mississippi River, like the Northwest territories, to America. So then it was under our control. So we truly ended up getting a pretty big victory out of the American Revolutionary War and the Treaty of Paris in 1783. Let's see what else. 1777, the Stars and Stripes fly in battle for the first time. Let me go see if I can find the first Stars and Stripes, because I don't believe, and here we go, this is the Betsy Ross flag. So let me show you all this one. So this is the Betsy Ross flag, which a lot of people say is the first American flag. But the first American flag, if you really wanted to call it that, let's see. Let me see if I can, let's see here. Let me see if I can go find this. The first technical American flag of the United Colonies was actually the Continental Union flag right here, which actually had the Union Jack, if you want to call it that, up in the top left corner, but the 13 stars and stripes once again prominently displayed on the flag. The Betsy Ross flag technically is the first modern American flag, but this flag here is what most people would claim is the first real American flag, because this one was adopted in late 1775, which was just right after the battles of Lexington and Concord, and so this would really be like the first flag of the Continental Army, and for that reason, the United States of America, which is really interesting. Honestly, I think the flag looks pretty cool, and it really looks, let me go get this here, it really looks to me pretty similar to the flag of Hawaii, which also has the Union Jack prominently displayed on it. Let me see if I can get it here. right here. It actually looks really similar in between the two.
It is pretty close, actually. It's just like the Union Jack, like put in the same spot where the stars were.
Yeah, the only difference in between this one and this one is that by the time that the Hawaii flag had been designed, the Irish had been integrated onto the flag. That's what the little red St. Andrew's cross is. That's actually the flag of Northern Ireland. Well, really Ireland as a whole when the flag was made, but nowadays it's just Northern Ireland. But at this time, when the Americans made their first flag, the Grand Union flag, it was only Britain, well, it was only England and Scotland that were represented on the flag. And what's really interesting about this, well, incredibly interesting about the British flag, like the Union Jack, is that it represents every single country that makes up the United Kingdom, except for Wales. Because technically Wales is an independent country that is a part of the United Kingdom, although technically it was a principality throughout most of British history, because it was the only part of Britain outside of Ireland that had pretty much been taken over and completely controlled by the English for hundreds of years, but nowadays is considered an independent country. And a lot of people continuously point out that the only kingdom in the United Kingdom that does not have representation on the flag is the Welsh, with like the Welsh dragon or something along those lines is not represented. Some people have actually come up with different designs where the Welsh dragon is included on the Union Jack, usually in the center area right here, and it's in red like it is on the Welsh flag, but it's never been adopted by the British government, probably for aesthetic reasons, because the Union Jack as it exists right now is probably one of the most aesthetic flags in the entirety of the world, in my opinion. To me, it's more iconic than the American flag, at least with the simplicity and the striking design that it has, at least to me. But still, this was the first modern American flag that would exist, because it wouldn't really change much from this point. The rectangular area in blue, which is called the Union, would end up expanding to be a little bit longer, but beyond that, it was pretty much the same one. The famous one, though, that really got the flag emboldened in American memory is the Star-Spangled Banner flag pictured here, which actually has 15 stars, because by this point, I believe, let's see, I'm trying to think, what 2 additional states had been added to the country at this point? It would have been, I think one of them was Ohio, and the other one was, it was some state up in the Northwest Territory. Some area of the country up there, I think, but I can't really remember for sure. Like, I'm actually having a hard time remembering that. Also, one cool thing, speaking about the U.S. flag, which is really, really cool, is that the Star-Spangled Banner, as you see here, this is the actual flag that flew above Fort McHenry when Francis Scott Key rode the Star-Spangled Banner. So if there was any American flag that was particularly important to the history of America, it actually would be this one right here. And a lot of y'all will notice that it looks like the fabric has been cut off down here at the bottom, where my mouse cursor is moving, and that it was also cut out right here. And that's because these parts of the flag were actually cut off as souvenirs up until about the 1860s and 70s. The family that privately owned this flag cut out one of the stars for someone to take as a souvenir, as a memento. I guess they really liked them a lot, so they gave them a star, but then they were cutting up chunks of the flag down here, the actual stripes, to give away to other folks. So only about like 2/3 of the original flag still exists, but it's currently on display at the National Museum of American History at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., in a specially contained case. It is huge, actually. Like, not a lot of people can even grasp the size of this flag. Let me see if I can show y'all. Here we go. That is a man right there, a 5'8" tall guy standing in front of this flag. That's how big this flag is.
Wow, that's crazy.
Man, it is. It's huge. I mean, this thing was massive because it was I believe if I'm correct, it was a garrison flag, and garrison flags are the largest kind there is, at least at this time in history. And that doesn't go off of the modern measurements, because there's garrison post and storm flags in the modern U.S. military, but those are of completely different dimensions than the garrison flags of old. And this was what was considered a garrison flag of old. So this thing is freaking massive. I mean, this thing is huge. And also, it had to have been impressive to see that thing during the Battle of Fort McHenry or the Battle of Baltimore, because once the gunpowder began to clear, you just saw this giant flag. It's about as big as the fort it flew over, just floating in the wind. So that had to have been pretty cool. That's why the anthem was made. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that little day in history part fairly well. And also, let's see what else. Let's see. 1943, Allies invade Italian mainland, and they did. They invaded Sicily, and I believe they invaded around the area of Pozzallo and all the way up to the area of Gela, and then they advanced up to the area. Where in the hell? Let's see. They advanced to catch Catania, and then I believe the 3rd Armored Division stretched out and went west to go capture Palermo. But then Patton said, screw that, and I think he tried to race from Montgomery to the Strait at Messina, or something along those lines. And so then the Italian contingent or garrison at Palermo just ended up surrendering, I think, later on, if I remember that story correctly. But correct me if I'm wrong on that. I might be wrong. Also, cool to know Japan surrendered. I mean, this is one hell of a day in history. Not to go through every single one of them, but incredibly cool bits of history that happened on today and yesterday. And so I got to say, thank you so much for the massive support. Thank you for sharing that with us. This is incredibly cool to read that and know that it happened on this day in history out of any other day. But still, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat here. This one is going to go to David Walter. Throws in a $40 donation, and thank you very much, David, for that support. He said, can you explain again to the chat why a landlocked country/countries can't do anything regarding the ICC? And also, number 1, despite recent Mexico cooperation with Canada and USA, will the next president affect the NA truce?
Let's see. Interesting questions. I don't think I can really answer the last one too much because that will probably end up getting into politics, so I can't really talk about that much. But as far as the ICC goes, it doesn't really matter whether they're a landlocked country or not. The ICC really just doesn't have any enforceable power. The ICC is a collection of countries that said, we're going to make this little group here that has really no power, and they'll be able to issue warrants and stuff like that for reasons. And so this little group can issue the warrants, but if a country doesn't want to follow through on them, they don't have to. Because this isn't the first time that a country has refused to arrest Putin that's in the ICC. South Africa did the same thing, and I believe a couple of other countries have as well. And so going off of that, it doesn't really have to do with it being a landlocked country. It just has to do with the fact no one really wants to arrest Putin. And on top of that, they're not going to be allowing him into the country if they already planned on arresting him in the first place. So that's generally kind of the way that works, at least from what I know. But as far as recent Mexican cooperation with the United States, a lot of people don't like to realize this as a fact, or they do, and there's different ways that this works. But Mexico is well, it was last year. This year they actually ended up being overtaken by a little bit by the Canadians. But the Mexicans for a couple of years was America's biggest trading partner. Now Canada has taken the title of being America's biggest trading partner, but Mexico is literally just right behind them. As far as it goes, the Canada-United States-Mexico Trade Agreement, is spelled CUM, or the CUM agreement, is the one that ends up currently dominating right now the North American trade market, if you want to call it that. And it really is centered around Mexico and Canada being able to trade with the United States and vice versa. That's really what the entire trade agreement is about. It's really the most important one for America because we're talking about, where in the world are our biggest trade partners? Our biggest trade partners are on this very continent. It's Mexico to the south and Canada to the north. So it's very important to make sure that that kind of a trade agreement would continue to exist. As far as the idea that that will change, it will not change. Because if I remember correctly, the best way I can put this is that the prior administration, before that, ended up not really liking the NAFTA agreement, the North American something trade agreement is what it stood for, and so they ended up having some of the points in NAFTA rearranged, and then they created a new name for the trade alliance, and that was the end of it. But as far as it goes, there's not really going to be any change. I mean, there could be tariff changes, or something smaller like that, but there's not going to be anything that's incredibly big or like really shattering the American economy, because any advisor to any president, no matter who they are, is going to say this is literally the most important trade alliance that America has combined. It's about twice as valuable as our trade with China. And so for this reason, we really can't do that much to rock the boat. And also, I see a lot of people saying a certain thing about the name of the current agreement. Y'all think I'm kidding, but that's the name. Like, that's actually the name. Let me go see let's see, 1 second. Let me see if I can put this in without getting some sort of a weird result. Let's see. Trade agreement. Oh, man. I'm so scared to put this in, I'm sure. Let's see here. Let's see. 1 second. Canada, United States, Mexico. Let me go see if I can find it. So here we go. Hang on. So let me go find it. Oh, thank God. Thank God. Because I remember people saying that the new agreement was called CUM. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to pronounce it. But thank the Lord that when they finalized it, don't know when, it was actually called USMCA, which stands for United States, Mexico, and Canada. And so, let's see here. Let me make sure.
Wait a minute, what was it called? What was it called before?
When it was being written up, it was called CUM for Canada, United States, Mexico.
Whoa.
Whoa, Jack! Whoa!
Freaky agreement.
What are we trading? We're trading banks. Oh, money? Not that kind of bank. it's like it's a different kind of bank. But still, here it is. Right here, the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, the USMCA. Thank the Lord they did not go with the original name, which went from the most northern partner to the most southerly partner, because in that order it would have been CUM. So anyways, it went into force in 2020. Let's see here. Created a more level playing field for American workers, including improved rules of origin for automobiles, trucks, other products, and disciplines on currency manipulation, benefiting American farmers, ranchers, and agribusiness by modernizing and strengthening food and agricultural trade in North America. Man, they're just hitting the buzzword soup. Like, they're not actually going to tell you what it did. They're just going to give you all the buzzwords. I mean,
I think we can boil this down to a couple of sentences. It's the best trade agreement, the best we've ever seen. The world's never seen an agreement like this. It was inked with the best ink. Best agreement I've ever seen. It's not the CUM freaky agreement. We got rid of that one and we brought in this better one. It's only the best.
I mean, back in the prior administration, they said, where's the bank? And I said, we're going to bring back the bank. It's going to be the greatest bank. It's not going to house money. It's going to house something different, something that looks like milk, but still nevertheless very valuable. We're going to have a lot of it.
Mexico.
What?
Mexico.
We're going to send it to Mexico. We're going to make Mexico. But anyways, beyond that, nevertheless, it's a revised NAFTA. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And I would say no one's going to really affect it, because the current trade, like, regardless, because a lot of people are talking about the upcoming election, because it's riveting and people are excited about it and everything. Yippee. But if regardless of who ends up winning, I'm fairly certain that the USMCA is not going to be changed, because it was actually made by the prior administration, and it seems as though the prior administration and the current administration don't really have that many problems or issues with the standing trade agreement, so it probably won't get changed or affected at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, we're moving on to the next question. We're throwing it all out, and we're moving on to the next question. And this one goes to Greg Carmen. He puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Greg, for that support. We appreciate it. He said, hearing good news daily about the Bradley, but not much on the Abrams that's positive. And are they being misused or really not as good as advertised?
Well, I hate to say it. I mean, I don't mean to say this in like a scathing way. Misused is really the best answer. They use the Abrams with no infantry support. They spearhead the thing into the Russians like it's invincible, and and then it ends up getting disabled, and then they're shocked. And it's like, I wouldn't be that shocked, because you're exposing the tank on all sides to enemy fire. You know, not only are drones an issue for every tank these days, but spearheading, like driving a tank like a spear into the enemy and then getting in their lines without infantry support is a death sentence for really any vehicle. So the fact that they're using the Abrams like that is really the reason why it's not doing that well. And I find it so aggravating because, you know, like I know people like Ukraine, and it's great to like them and everything, but at some point, I feel like there's some fair criticism that's due. Like, America went and trained these people on how to use the Abrams, right? You know, like, we went through all this effort and all this time to tell them, okay, here's how to use the Abrams, here's how to use it with infantry, here's how to coordinate it, now we're going to send them over. And we sent them 31 of them. And then as soon as they get over there, the 47th Brigade, which uses the Bradleys quite well, mind you, they actually use those pretty decently. But with the Abrams, they went, okay, everyone, we're going to just spearhead the enemy one tank at a time and no infantry support. Let's pray. And then when the tanks started getting blown up, they would go, oh, the Abrams, I mean, it's just not that good. It doesn't do that well, And it's like, have y'all ever used your own tanks like this? It's like, no. It's like, why in the world do you think an Abrams would do that? Like no one in America told them, hey, buddy, you can just take this tank and just drive it right into enemy lines with no support at all, and it'll do fine. No one told them that. Like, if anyone had told them anything in America, they probably told them, look, make sure there's like a couple of 100 yards in between you and the infantry, and whenever the tank's needed, just pull it in front of the infantry by about 100 yards, fire at the target, and then withdraw back behind the line, and then relocate to a new firing position. That's probably what they were really told, but then when they used them in practice, it's a completely different thing. And that's what, like, has annoyed me so much about how they've used the Abrams, and then they dog on it. And it's like it's like the unfair kind of dogging that they gave to the AMX-10s that they got, that are light tanks, and then they ended up using them like main battle tanks, and then they ended up getting destroyed because it's a light tank doing the job of a main battle tank. And they add, like, for some reason, the Ukrainians acted like the AMX-10 could just take an ATGM to the face and survive. And it's like, they can't. They have no armor. Like a heavy machine gun can punch through this thing. Why in the world would an ATGM bounce off of it, or the armor would absorb that? That makes no sense. So then they started losing the AMX-10s, and the Ukrainians went, well, the AMX-10, I guess Western tech just isn't what it cracks up to be every time. It's like, no, how y'all are using it isn't cracking up every time. It's like, our Western equipment across the board, it's not a propaganda statement, it is a true factual statement, is technologically superior to everything else in the world right now. Maybe one day that will change, you know, because eventually it usually does, but at some point, but it's not going to be it's not going to be soon, and especially it's not going to be going up against what they're having to fight with Russia right now. And so the fact that Abrams are getting damaged and destroyed at somewhat regular rates, it really shows that they're using the tanks wrong. Not that the tank isn't that good, because if anything, the tank showed that during the occupation of Iraq, the war in Iraq in 2003, and also during the Gulf War, the Abrams did surprisingly well. And it also did incredibly well in the hands of the Iraqis until they also started to misuse it heavily as well, and then they ended up getting them destroyed in pretty decent numbers. Mishandling or misusing any kind of a vehicle outside of their doctrinal role will usually always end up getting them damaged or destroyed. That's always the answer. So if they end up being destroyed or damaged in wildly high numbers, chances are they're being misused. But with mishandled. Like if maintenance is poor, that will also end up getting vehicles possibly damaged or destroyed, not even by enemy action, just by wear and tear. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. Don't mean to sound like I'm angry at the Ukrainians, but it does annoy me, though, when the Ukrainians act like there is no wrongs, like they can do no faults, and like it's always something else's fault. That's why, you know, I don't really lean that direction every single time that something happens, because the Ukrainians aren't perfect. Like, they're doing pretty good, but they aren't perfect. And I feel like the way that they've used and treated the AMX-10s from France and the Abrams from America have been fairly lopsided and pretty off, like, in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, Enforcer, I don't know if you got to see this or not, but we just had a bot come in here and say F. Zelensky. And the name of the bot was 100 Proof. So I said, huh, a Russian bot with the name 100 Proof. I said, is that the strength of your favorite vodka, comrade? And now, if there's not a giveaway that somebody's a bot from Russia, I'm afraid the name 100 Proof would give it away right off the bat because I don't know anybody that would name themselves 100 Proof unless you're an alcoholic. So very interesting to see. But with that, we're now moving on.
Wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
Wait a minute. Dude, 100 proof. Ivan, where in the world do you even buy alcohol of that proof strength? Gas station, blip. Like, I just pull out this damn gas nozzle, point it in my mouth, and pull the trigger until I'm wasted, blip. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
There are people that actually drink gasoline for alcohol. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know. Like, and that's those people are Russians. Like, you know, what do you think I am? Some kind of an idiot? I'm just playing. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it.
Also, don't go drink gasoline for alcohol either, people. Just want to make that disclaimer out there so that way nobody's reporting the stream saying we told people we could do that. Do not drink gasoline. Please remember that.
It's not healthy. By the way, don't drink too much of like drinkable alcohol as well, by the way, because it damages your liver. Kind of like smoking too much or any other thing like that. Just don't do it too much. Also, I like this. I just want to say this really quickly. This is like a hot dog man thing. I like how smoking cigarettes can damage your lungs because your lungs really aren't made to inhale smoke. And I also like how it's openly admitted that alcohol also damages your liver, especially over prolonged usage over a decent period of time. And I also like how any other kind of narcotic or drug has some sort of a side effect to it that is commonly known publicly, you know, that's an issue. But then when it comes to weed, for some reason, it's just the miracle thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with weed that doesn't do anything to you. Like, I find that a little bit weird because it's like, it's interesting that alcohol, which honestly, out of all of them, seems the most mundane because it's literally just a liquid that makes you that kind of messes with your biochemical balance a little bit when you drink it, that can end up having long-term health effects, but for some reason weed can't, which you end up inhaling just like you do a cigarette or a cigar. It's like, I feel like anything that deposits smoke into your lungs, regardless whether it's tobacco leaves or marijuana, I feel like those are kind of in the same category, that it's probably not good for your lungs and also your bronchioles, which absorb the oxygen, because you've got smoke particles, which are made up of finite little pieces of actual particle matter that are getting into your lungs, which usually is not supposed to happen. I just feel like that's unhealthy. You know, I feel like all those things are generally unhealthy, in my opinion.
Isn't it true that when you drink alcohol and stuff and you get drunk on it, technically it's the alcohol entering your bloodstream. It deprives your red blood cells of some of their oxygen content, and therefore it starves the brain of slight oxygen, like oxygenation in the brain, and that causes drunkenness where you act goofy.
Yeah, I would have to say, and also I'm seeing some people. We makes this too. Hot Dog Man is a shining example of that. Let's see. I agree. I would. In Tusk Force say you don't have to smoke weed. Yeah, you don't have to. But still, you know, like the people who smoke weed, like I'm not talking about any other thing. Like the people who smoke weed and they're like, it has no side effects. It's like, it doesn't it though. I mean, like if you got near like a house fire and you breathed in the smoke, like forgetting that there's like toxic stuff usually in that smoke. Like it was completely non-toxic smoke. Inhaling smoke in general is just a bad idea. You know, it's like, it's just not good. So it doesn't matter what the source of the smoke is. It's just bad for your health. It's especially bad for your lungs. And so I don't know why people always try and like negate that with that one thing while admitting that everything else does have a problem. You know, like that's one thing I always find a little weird. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chat here is going to go to Andy L., the longtime channel legend, and he throws in a $20 support. He actually throws in two of them. One does not have a comment. It was a $20 support as well. A huge shout out to you, Andy, for that support as well. And also the one that had a comment, it said, what is your opinion of Poland ordering F-35s?
I think it's a really good thing. The F-35 is ending up being the first stealth aircraft that a lot of countries are getting access to, and a lot of the Western world is ending up getting these, like Britain, Poland, Australia, Japan, South Korea, I believe, is also slated to get some as well in the future. So I would say it's actually a really good thing, and it's great to know that Poland, with it being the largest land army this side of Europe, and also the largest one facing the Russians, that they will be able to have stealth aircraft that are multi-role capable instead of just a specific niche like air superiority like the F-22 is. So I would actually say, in my opinion, Andy L, it's an incredibly good thing for Poland to be able to have these F-35s going on into the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. It's folks like you who help this thing to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Leora Avagile, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Leora, for that support as well. They said, hey, Enforcers, what are your thoughts on the Philadelphia corridor? Do you see it as a safety and security issue if they lose control of the corridor because Hamas smuggling weapons and recourses from Egypt?
And that's a good question. I'm not sure if it's the Philadelphia corridor. It's something that sounds really similar. It's like the Philippi corridor or something like that. Let me actually go pull that up. Philippi corridor, something like that. Corridor. Let's see. Actually, it is it's the Philadelphia corridor. It does sound almost like Philadelphia, but it's this little corridor right down here. Let me see if I can show you all this right down here. It's right here. This is like the Philadelphia corridor of a sort. But still, what this is, it's the border in between the Gaza. Dang, I just slammed my teeth together so hard right there. Felt like one of them cracked. But beyond that, it's the corridor in between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. And this is usually where a lot of the weapons end up getting smuggled in. They don't end up getting smuggled in, actually, across the border, like over land. They actually end up tunneling underground and then sending them through that way. That's how they ended up building such a large amount of weapons inside the Gaza Strip over a few years. As far as controlling this area, it is important. And a lot of people don't know this. Like people go, well, they're just going underground, and that's always an argument that people make. But the thing is, though, is that there is a way to fight that. You install microphones into the ground. Like, that sounds stupid, but that's what they did in World War I, and that's also what they've done since then to be able to pick up any sounds of any seismic activity, like a truck traveling through an underground corridor, or people trying to dig an underground corridor. You install microphones around the ground, underground, in that area, and they will be able to pick up and hear the sound of people tunneling or operating underground. And then from there, you can send some people out to figure out where that tunnel is and then destroy it. So controlling this corridor is fairly important, and it would be good for Israel to continue to keep control of it, because they'll be able to completely close off, at least by land, any kind of Hamas access to further weaponry. Now, by sea, it's a little bit of a different story, because they could end up hopping the coast and trying to make their way into the Gaza Strip that way, but the Israeli Navy could take care of that. And if they ever tried to go over, outside of outside of sea and land, they could try an air route, but that would be next to impossible, because a paraglider would be pretty easy to see, and you're not really going to be transporting a lot of weapons and a lot of equipment that way. It's going to be very, very small numbers doing it like that, and it's going to be very easy to see and very easy to shoot down. So with that, I would say yes, it's a very important corridor for them to control, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Fro. And Fro puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for that support, Fro. I don't see any comment attached, though, but we appreciate the support. It helps keeps the light on. What'd you say, Jack? But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Fro. You didn't throw in a comment, but we're greatly appreciative, and I thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Davo LBC, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you, Davo, as well. He said, LSA Private Davo. Oh, it's Davo. I keep getting it wrong. He said, Davo reporting that I've been spreading bot guts on all that toast there in Russia and feeding it to the Russian army. Damn. That's some Jeffrey Dahmer activities right there on that one. Thank you, Davo, for this thing here that you've done to the Russian army. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta appreciate it. Sounds like it might even be better than Concord Catering. Just forward that to the Russian High Command. And so with that, Thank you so much once again for the support, Davo. That was brutal right there. I'm not going to lie. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And this one goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Quantum Fighter, as well. They said that should Ukraine retreat for Kursk to support Pokrovsk vector and stop the Russian rapid advance there? And how long until Zelensky and Sersky can focus north without losing too much morale and thus sowing discontent among the Eastern AFU forces? And live question, please.
And thank you so much for the support, Quantum Fighter. And I don't think the Ukrainians should retreat from Kursk yet. To be entirely honest, though, now that I've seen how deep they've gotten, I don't really know what the objective is here, rather than holding up some Russian forces in this area. I don't really know what the point of it was. But beyond that, I would say not yet. If anything actually did start to happen in the northern area, they would have a little bit of time to respond, and then they could quickly retreat out of the area of Kursk and try and relocate those forces. But I don't think they should do that preemptively or early, in a sense. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you so much once again for support, Quantum Fighter, and helping this channel keep on running, and also being an old guard as well. And with that, thank you. And we're on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Snowy, who puts in an $11 super chat. Thank you very much, Snowy, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. And also, let me do some checking real quick. Let me take a look here. I think that might have been Snowy's first super chat. Let me go back and look. Let's see here. I'm looking through. It is their first ever super chat. It's an €11 donation, and thank you very much, Snowy, for that support. First time ever. They said, "What are the Ukrainians focusing on electricity facilities? How likely do you think it is that they might bomb the Tsemelaikskaya hydropower dam? And also, are the Ukrainian forces still in the Kinburn Spit?"
The Ukrainian forces, from what I know, probably aren't in the Kinburn Spit anymore. And as far as attacking hydroelectric power plants, I'm highly doubting that they would do that, Snowy, because if they did, and for some reason the dam ended up rupturing or collapsing, Ukraine has ended up committing largely a crime against humanity by possibly drowning and killing a large amount of civilians in the process. So I would doubt that they would do something like that, just for the fact it's a hydroelectric dam. But they will be going after other power plants in the area that are actually on ground, on actual land. So that way, if they hit them, they will be knocking out power production abilities, but they won't possibly be creating some sort of a massive humanitarian incident that would end up making them look pretty bad. Because the Russians already did that down in Novokakhovka, and that did not bode that well for them, at least in the public eye. Although some people forget really quickly, like that one bot we had in here tonight going, I mean, the Russians haven't done anything that bad after they drowned thousands of people when that dam ruptured. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support, Stewie. And thank you for your first super chat ever and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Razor58 and also Plant Lord for each putting in a $10 support, and no comments attached on either one of those, but huge thanks to you both for helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a $10 support from Lord Lathos LSA, who says LSA forever, and take a live chat question, please.
And we will. And I thank you so much for the support, Lord Lathos LSA, and of course, LSA forever. Long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And I gotta thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to be possible. Because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to take a question from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
So this question from the chat is going to go to, let's see, David Long. He said, do you think that France would intervene since the U.S. has way less control over France?
It's a possibility that they could. They've made it clear in the past they would want to. As far as militarily, the United States really has no impact on France. But economically, we may actually pose some form of an impact on them. We could possibly conduct actions against them that way. So while they are a lot more free to do what they would wish, they aren't that free. But I still think they would have a higher chance of going in there and intervening on Ukraine's side than Poland would, in my honest opinion. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring the live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ambi Pambi, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you, Ambi, as well for that support. They said, I can point with either hand, but I can't decide which one.
And is that supposed to be point or shoot, Matthew? Is that supposed to be point or shoot?
It looks like pointing to me, but if that's shooting, that's new on me.
If it's shooting, if it's pointing, I'd say whichever one you're more comfortable with, maybe both at the same time. If you're talking about shooting amby-pamby, I would say probably right-handed. I shoot left-handed because I have a mental issue called being left-handed. It's a bit of a problem. But if you can shoot with either hand, I'd much rather shoot right-handed because pretty much every gun in the world is made for a right-handed shooter. Very few of them are made ambidextrous, and most of those are bullpups. And bullpups are the hideous creatures of the world, really. But still. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to David Walter, who puts in a 10 and said, do you think the ICC have any teeth in countries that aren't super or near superpowers that aren't landlocked?
Nah, the ICC doesn't have any real power. It's as useless as the UN. And a lot of people put so much faith in these, what I call the forum organizations, like the UN, the World Economic Forum, the ICC. A lot of people, for some reason, think that the things they say actually matter. And the reality is that nothing that any of these people say actually matter at all. It's like completely useless stuff. Because if you're a near superpower country, chances are you're probably already on good terms with Russia, so you wouldn't do anything to them. Or you're on bad terms with them, and for that reason, Putin would never visit your country, like America. Like, we're not even in the ICC, I don't think. Are we, Matthew?
I can't recall. Let me look real quick. Is the USA in the ICC? Or under the jurisdiction of the ICC, I guess you could say. Let's see. It says, the Rome Statute. I remember learning about this in political science, and it was really obnoxious. The Rome Statute created the ICC, and the United States is not a state party. So, no, we are not in it.
So, if you're a superpower like America, you're not in it. And I don't really think China's in it either, or if they are, they allow Putin and Shoigu and everyone to show up, and they didn't arrest anyone either, because, you know, you're a superpower. What the hell is the ICC going to do? It's not like they have any enforceable power. It's not like they're going to sanction you. Like, what does the ICC have? Some public funding and a couple of $1 million from maybe some European countries, and that's it? They got nothing. They're not going to be able to do anything. And so, in my opinion, like,
and also, at what point does the ICC just start? At what point does the ICC just start coming into other countries and saying, "Oh, we don't like that. That's a war crime. We're arresting that person in this country today," and then that country has to oblige by it and say, "Oh yeah, just take our citizen. Just you non-governmental agency, just take the citizen and do what you want with them." That would be kind of messed up.
Yeah, just violate our sovereignty and exist as a power even greater than the national government in this country. You can do whatever you wish without any form of national due process that respects our sovereignty. Please, by all means, go ahead. No one's going to agree to that. And that's why the ICC largely is useless, in my opinion. Like, I really wish, to be honest with y'all, that stupid groups like the UN and the World Economic Forum and the ICC would just disappear, or people would treat them like they're non-existent, because the reality is that they mean nothing. They really do. They have no impact on the world. There's no way for them to actually do what they're designed to do for multiple reasons. They're just stupid, non-existent organizations that usually say and do things that are either completely stupid or they just have no ability to actually follow through on what they're saying. Like, when people really look at the relations that the world has with each other, a lot of people need to stop looking at these stupid international organizations, and they need to look at the actual countries themselves and look at it like it was the early 1900s again, where each country was out doing its own thing. Like the United States, we have allies around the world, and then we have enemies, and we deal with it on a nation-to-nation basis, really. But then Russia is a country as well, and it has allies, very few, and then it also has a lot of enemies. But it deals with all of them largely on a country-to-country basis, or it deals directly with America, and the decisions that it makes, or the actions it makes with America, affects their relationship not only with pretty much all of North America, but also all of Europe as well, pretty much simultaneously. And then with China, China is a country on its own. It deals with everyone on its own. But then it also has some friends, and most of those friends are debt slaves, really, but they still technically are friends. But we still deal with them as an individual country, and what we do with China is not reflective of what anyone else does with China. Because while in an American mindset, we're not really that big of a fan of China, Europe, on the other hand, kind of is, like Macron. Like, Macron took a trip to China and was talking about maybe furthering Chinese-French relations, or really Chinese-European relations. And so, once again, China and everyone else in the world deals with each other on a country-to-country basis. And while the world is much more attached, because some people like to say that globalism is taking over, in my reality, there's a poorly cobbled together veil of this, like, global kind of a thing has been put together, but anything that people say is global or globalist, it really doesn't exist with any kind of enforceable power. We are still entirely a nationalist world that works on the pride and nationalism of each nation, and those nations exercising their own sovereignty and rights with and against each other. And so, for that reason, I would say that the ICC really doesn't have an ability to do anything, and it just is a useless organization, really, like the UN or the World Economic Forum. I don't know what it is. Like, I'll be honest with y'all, I don't know what it is with everyone treating the World Economic Forum like it's this, like, all-powerful being. Like, I've seen that a lot lately from all sides, and it's so stupid to me, because I think they said something like, what was it? You will have nothing or you'll like it. It's like, and who the hell are they? It's like, they don't run anything. It's a forum. You know, it's like, it's just a group of goofy people that get together and talk. Just like the UN is a group of goofy people that get together to talk. Just like the ICC is a group of goofy people that get together to talk. And none of them have the power to do anything. It's literally just a meeting. It's like a club. But anyways, I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Nathaniel Duggett, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Nathaniel, for that support. They said, do you think that it's possible that Zelensky is removing certain elements of the government that were corrupt or involved in some illegal actions with politicians in different countries?
It may be the case, but, you know, not every single one of them, in my opinion, could be for that reason. Some of them have to be for different reasons, because, you know, like everything, Zelensky isn't a god. You know, it's not like everything he does is going to be righteous and perfect. I mean, who's to say it's not the other way around? And behind the scenes, some of these people in the Rada are seeing Zelensky do things they don't like. They make it quite clear they don't like it. Zelensky says, whatever, if you don't like it, live with it. And then they end up resigning. You know, that could be another way that it goes. You know, we don't really know because there's so little information coming out. There's no real clear picture to be made of this, because it just, like, I'll be honest, like, personally, it doesn't make any sense to me to say there's a government reshuffle, because, you know, like, what's the worst thing to do? Take someone who's been in a position for years and finally is somewhat semi-experienced in running that specific department of the government, and then throwing them into a completely different department of the government that they've had no involvement with, and then having them run it. That's like the dumbest thing ever. Like, that's like saying, okay, I got this mechanic here, and he's going to start working as an electrician building houses. That guy doesn't know shit about electricity. Like, he knows about a car engine and how to fix it. Like, he doesn't know anything about being an electrician, so why in the world are we switching him around? You know, that doesn't really make that much sense to me, to be entirely honest. So, I don't know. It could be a myriad of things, but I feel like all of them can't be a corruption fight, because then we're ending up going down the line that a Russian propagandist would say, oh, you know, Putin can't be doing anything questionable. He's an upstanding leader of greatness. It's all these Russian generals and all these oligarchs that are corrupt, not Putin. Like, you know, like, at some point, there's got to be something else going on. Because, you know, like, I'm all for the Ukrainians, all pro-Ukrainian and everything, but I still don't let that blind what I feel is common sense. And when you see something like this going on, where people just keep on dropping like flies, like they're either resigning or they're getting moved to other positions that honestly are lesser than stature than the one they were in, it looks like there may be a little bit more going on than meets the eye. We just don't really know because no one says anything about it. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this super chat is going to go to Teslands once again, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Teslands, for that support. They said Germany is shifty of late towards support of Ukraine, and they have a Russian influence in parliament. Oh, dear. They said Turkey is shifting, and Hungary, who else? And who do you think is solid? And also, can Europe keep it together if the USA steps back as leader?
And I would say Next country in Europe to lead would be France. In my opinion, they're kind of positioning themselves to be the strong man of Europe, really looking out for their interest and being assertive enough to fill that role. That's what I would say. But as far as the other questions, Germany is kind of on the fence, but they've really always been on the fence. Turkey is stupid, like, best way to explain it. Oh, by the way, I didn't even cover the whole thing with the US 6 fleet, but that y'all can go check that out on the map if y'all want to, because we're running way over time at this point. And Hungary has always been on the fence as well. So I would say the countries you can trust are Britain, France, Poland, and America. They're pretty much the bulwark of all the support that Ukraine gets anyways. So as long as those 4 countries are backing Ukraine, that's really all they need. Everyone else does their part sometimes. Other people don't. But really, Poland, France, Britain, and America make up about 90% of all the support Ukraine gets in most categories. And so with that, I thank you so much once again.
You know, Turkey just like got in the BRICS today or something like that. Like they requested to join the BRICS today.
Who did?
Turkey. They actually requested. Let me go back and make sure I'm reading this properly. Let's see here. Let me scroll down here. It says Turkey submits request to join BRICS nations as of today, 14 hours ago.
Well, that's a little stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say Turkey's pretty much doing everything possible to piss NATO off at this point.
I would say if they join BRICS, Turkey has to go. That would be my opinion. And honestly, I think they should be cut out of the European Union Customs Union as well. If y'all didn't know that, Turkey is not a EU member, but they do have some of the advantages that an EU member would have. They're kind of a part of a customs union that allows lower tariffs to import stuff into the EU and also to export stuff as well. I would cut them out of that, cut them out of NATO. I would cut them out of everything. In fact, I would sanction them into oblivion at that point, to be entirely honest, and I would also cut them off from any further U.S. arms or spare parts shipments in the future and let their army rot. That's what I would do. But, that's just me. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. Y'all let me know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one also goes to Teslans, who puts in another 10. And thank you very much, Teslans, for that support. And he said, are you getting the Hawk Tua girl on as a guest for Matt? And what would she be coming on for? What would she be coming on for? Just to chat?
I don't know. I have no idea what that request is even about. I mean, she's famous for one thing, and that's that Hawk Tua. But beyond that, I don't know what in the world we would do with the Hawk Tour girl. I mean, we generally don't have guests. I don't think we would make any exceptions to that rule. No disrespect to the Hawk Tour girl. I mean, there's plenty going on with that as it is. But beyond that, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andy L. once again, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Andy, for that support. He said good night.
Oh, and good night. And I hope you sleep well, Andy L. And good night to you. And thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Teslans as well. Teslans is obsessed with the Hawk Tua. Yeah, he puts in a 10 and says, can you do an impression of that girl? I'm going to have to pass on that one. Someone's going to clip that and it's going to be forever on the internet. So I'm going to pass on that.
I would have to agree as well, Teslans. I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But I don't want that to be clipped. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a $10 donation and says, when do you think Ukraine might have their next election?
Let's see. When who knows? According to the Ukrainian government, when the war is over. Although they kind of floated it about having elections a little while ago, and then we never heard that about that again. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Terrence Custer, who puts in a 5 and says, you're doing a great job, guys. Thank you.
And thank you so much for the support, Terrence Custer. And thank you for saying we're doing a great job. I hope we are, at least a little bit. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Game Dev Code, I think. And they put in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Game Dev Code or Cade, for that support. I said, do y'all think that if Ukraine continues to cut into Russian power production, that it will mean massive civilian casualties when the winter comes and civil civil unrest?
It would mean civil unrest. Mass casualties, probably not so much, but it would cause a decent amount of civil unrest, in my opinion. I would think so. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to Elka Sir, who puts in a 5 and says, I have an intuition that Belarusian army would probably attack, but lose on purpose during the Rasputitsa, and then use that as an excuse to oust Lukashenko.
That might be the case, but they probably would simplify that a lot. And once they got the order to attack, they'd overthrow them right then and there instead of going through the effort of actually making an offensive plan and then failing at it and then turning their whole army around and marching back into Belarus after they've instigated the Ukrainians and then overthrow them. But they might do that as well. You never know, because sometimes there's a very dramatic and interesting way that some countries end up ending, really. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Sir. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Octavian, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Octavian, for that support as well. They said, what is your business's plan? Or what were you promised after promoting the losing side? Oh, wait a minute. This is a damn bot throwing in a 5. I'll gladly take the 5, though. Thank you very much for that support. And also, if they're still in the chat, they're being very quiet, or I'd have banned them already. But I didn't even realize that earlier. But thanks for the support. You're funding a pro-Ukraine channel. You Russian bot, you. But Enforcer, what say you?
Let's see. My business plan was to cover news and to support Western interests. We do that fairly well on this channel. I'm pretty proud of it, actually. We've ended up creating a community separate from everyone else's that's apolitical and just focuses entirely on Western interests and crushing the forces of evil around the world. So I'd say fairly good business plan, actually, when I put it out there like that, Octavian, because it's not really about the money, Spider-Man. It's more about what we're actually doing and what we're trying to rally people around, which is being against folks like you, which I think we've done really good at so far. And the losing side, I don't really think there's ever a losing side to be had here in the Western world. I think it would be a losing side to live in a country like Russia or China, where you really have given up all your freedoms and got nothing in return. In fact, you've lost everything you had in the meantime. That wasn't freedom. You lost all your money and your possessions. So I would say we're doing pretty good, and I think this is a good winning side. Because you see, no matter what happens in Ukraine, the reality here is that whether Ukraine actually won or lost at this point, the Russian army and the Russian economy is done for, and it will never recover. And so, at this point, no matter what happens in Ukraine, the West is largely won. And so, I would have to say that any military pro with half a brain would know that the Russians largely suck at fighting a war against what would largely be considered pre-war as a backwater nation, and the West would swipe the Russians off of the face of the earth like folks who just never really existed in the pages of history. We would make sure that their book would never be written beyond the page they started a war with us. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, so that way we can continue to spread a pro-Western message to put bastards like you in their place. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Robert Johnson, who puts in a...
Robert Jackson.
Sorry. I looked at somebody else's super chat, and I saw the last name Jackson somewhere in here. I don't know where, and Robert Johnson put in a $5 donation. Thank you very much, Robert, for that support, and I don't see any comment attached, but thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you for the support, Robert Johnson, and supporting this channel, helping you keep on running. Because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Samuel Penrod, who puts in a 5 and says, explain the importance of bobcats. And it's important, bobcats are important, you see, because they've blown up a lot of them in Russia. And bobcats are something that's a whole of Russia approach to the problem that we're seeing inside of Russia after they've gotten invaded and encountered this horrible situation here that the Ukrainians have put them in, rightfully so, because they deserved it. It's just really important to make sure the bobcats are destroyed and make sure that they're taken out and cleansed of all the fuel and all the hydraulic fluid that the bobcats have. And I just want to emphasize how important it is to take these bobcats out, because without taking out the bobcats, we might be in a big problem without taking out the bobcats. So that's the importance. But Enforcer, does that cover it?
I think that covers it incredibly well. I don't know if that was supposed to be like some sort of political circle talk to that answer or something, but
It was
sounded,
circle talk, yes.
yeah, I was like, damn, I was like, this is like some circle talk. Mr. President, what do you, Mr. President, what do you think about automobiles? Well, I think that wheels are incredibly important to society and they serve such a function, but at the same time, sometimes the negative drawbacks of some forms of locomotion can end up being a bit of a hindrance. But nevertheless, the U.S. government continues to seek out day by day how to balance the needs of the American citizenry with the pushing ebbs and flows of technological progress. So do you like them or not? Well, that's an interesting question. Just some stupid stuff like that.
Well, you
but-
see, before we can address the question of whether or not we like them, we have to address first what is a bobcat. And let me go on this 5-minute tirade real quick and confuse the hell out of the question taker right here. And then, I'm sorry, what was your question again? And by that time, the question asker has been forgetting what the question is. And they're like, okay, next question, please, thank you.
Or better yet, they sit there and they say something like, well, I like automobiles, but 10 years ago you made legislation against automobiles. Oh, well, I mean, I think you're just lying right there, and they really did, or something like that. It's like, what the hell? Anyways, we're getting too carried away on that one. With that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to David Walter, who puts in a 5 and said, given the geography, why do you think Mongolia was going to adhere to the ICC? Oh, and they weren't. They did not. They did not take Putin into custody, and they invited him there because they wanted that green money. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they did not. I would have to agree with Matthew. They didn't adhere to the ICC. They didn't arrest him. And the reason why is because they invited him, and they're not going to arrest someone that they ended up inviting or requested to come to Mongolia, and then they accepted it. You usually don't arrest people on that because you always act on a level of diplomatic good faith. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to David Walter again, who puts in an $11 super chat. And thank you, David, for the second support of the night. He said, do you think the melting of the North Pole caps will provide naval freeways across Canada to the superpowers and the Asian superpowers in the next 50 years?
Interesting question. The northern caps have already melted enough at this point that we've actually been able to open the Northwest Passage. Crazily enough, for the past few years, some merchant ships have actually been traveling around North America through the Northwestern Passages, which usually was frozen over with a thin layer of ice, but nowadays it's usually a pretty clear shipping lane, and so they just make their way through the Northwestern Passages around Alaska and then over into Asia. But as far as that goes, they'll never be able to use it because the United States would keep a pretty strong naval presence around the area of Alaska and also in this area, so they would never be using warships in that area for sure. And also on top of that, there's nothing really strategic in that area to fight for, and also it would be an unbelievably long supply line to be able to operate a ship in that area where there's nothing even strategic in the first place, really. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tor, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much for the support. They said, you're just being yourself, and that's a part of the show. We love it.
And I thank you so much for loving it, Tor. I'm sorry that every once in a while I have to end up going on like a small little soapbox thing about how we run the show and everything, and also the rules. But for some reason lately, I'm not sure it's because it's an election year and people want to just spew political BS wherever they can for all sides and hope that for some reason it makes people want to vote. And I also don't know what it is with people getting offended that we do voices. Like I just don't, I can't even understand that. And I don't mean to go on another little talk about that, but like we do them on everyone. And I found out that that's the case, that usually like when I do this one, people go, oh, that's so funny. Orange man. Or when I do this one and what happened? Everyone's like, that's funny. That's that senile old guy. That's so funny. When I do this one, then people go, oh, that son of a bitch, how dare he. It's like we've literally made jokes on everyone. Like, I don't know what it is with people getting offended about specific people, because then we've also done that before with one specific YouTuber. And while we've had bad blood with that YouTuber, specifically that guy supporting someone who doxed us, which was the hot dog man, which I'm not really happy that, someone would actively know that that was a thing, that we got doxed, and then try and step in and vilify us because we were defending ourselves against someone who doxed us. So I'm not really a big fan of him. But still, beyond that, we did that voice, which literally was nothing. Like, we just ended up doing the voice, not even adding anything to it or making it sound really stupid. And then I don't know why they're mocking me. It's like, it's just a joke. It's like if people did our voice, if people talked the way Matthew and me talked or imitated us, I find it funny. Like, because I don't care. It's like, yeah, we probably have some annoying vices, like, and with that, we're on to the next one. Like, that's probably really annoying to hear, like 900 times. I'm sure people would make fun of it. And I'm sure people would make fun of me going, hello, everyone, I'm the enforcer, because I say it the same way every time. It's something that can be made fun of. And if someone did it really good, I'd laugh at it. And if someone imitated Matthew, where he was like, good evening, folks, like, I would laugh at that because it's what Matthew does. It's what we do.
Hey, don't make fun of that.
How dare you, you asshole. But like, it's what we do. You know, it's like, like, if someone started to imitate us or something, I would laugh at it. I think it'd be funny, especially if it wasn't anything that was like just trying to, like, you know, smear us or anything like that. You know, and it was just like an innocent joke. I'd find it funny. You know, like, I don't know what people get so offended with the voices about, but I guess it is what it is. I guess some people have really thin skin, or some people really worship these people a little bit too much to where they can end up taking a joke about the people they like. You know, I guess that is what it is. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one here goes to Herp Derp NV, who puts in a $5 support, and thank you very much for that $5 support. And Herp Derp said, the guys getting offended by the voice impressions probably also believed Chris's mom when she said,
Oh no.
Chris's mom was, oh, Jack, whoa, that's an interesting one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I saw Chris's mom on the highway, and I said, whoa, Nelly, you are an animal, but you may as well be one. Grr.
Or something like that. Still, thank you so much for the support, Herb Durbin V. And I don't know, some people don't like the voices. And then you know, I'll see, like, we'll see some stupid people out there in the future. Like, every once in a while when someone takes a shit on the channel, and then I'll see a comment in the comment section of that video, and they'll be like, I really liked them up until the day they imitated the voice of Trump, Biden, RFK, let's see, who else? Sam Elliott, David Attenborough. And then that's when I lost all respect for him. And it's like, is that, like, it was that easy to lose all your respect doing a voice? It's like, it's a news show and we throw in jokes. It's like, if you can't handle jokes, like, I don't really care if you're here or not, really. I mean, like, it's like, you know, that's not really the kind of audience we're catering to. Like, if you're that sensitive that you can't take jokes, like, this isn't the show for you, you know, like, that's the thing. Like, if you like, there's literally every other channel in this platform that does what we do, none of them tell jokes. Like, none of them. And if they do, they're cringe. And it's like, those are the channels made for you. If you don't like our comedy or you don't like our voices, there's literally every other channel to pick from except for ours. It's like, you can't come here and complain about the voices or the jokes because it's what we do. You know, it's like, that just doesn't make any sense. It's like going, oh man, you know, I really like this city with all these public parks, but I think I'm going to go move to this other city. And then you move there and it doesn't have public parks. And you go, ugh, I hate this city. It doesn't have public parks. It's like, why the hell did you move here? It's like, go to the other city or something. You know, it's like, don't be stupid. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Stebbin Wolf, as well as VC Slim and Bob Down. Let's see, Stebbin put in a 5, and VC Slim put in a 2, along with Bob Down. And once again, a huge shout out to all three of you for supporting the channel, and we appreciate it very much. And we also have a 5 from Ed. This is Irish Ed, and he puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Ed. He said, Elize, Irish Ed here, 1783, my favorite founding father, Dr. Ben Franklin. He was actually the person that set Paris Treaty up, and God bless America.
And God bless America, Irish Ed. And thank you for the support. And And that's true, actually. Ben Franklin was the one who largely brokered the peace. Pretty impressive stuff, actually, that he did that. That's why he's considered one of the founding fathers through and through. I mean, hell, if it wasn't for him, America might not exist the way it does. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and sharing that with us. It's an interesting thing, as a matter of fact. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Lord Lathos LSA, who puts in a 2 and says, when do you plan on dropping that new merch?
And that new merch. I don't know. We were supposed to be working on that soon, I think, but I don't really know. I'm not really certain on that right now. We'll have to see. Probably after the vacation's over, that's when we'll put out the merch. But with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Steban Wolf, who puts in a 10 and says, is it just me, or when you showed the Russian advance map earlier, doesn't it kind of look like there is a Ukrainian pocket beneath the Russian offensive that they're trying to surround?
Let's see. This little area in between Krasnoyarivka and Karlivka, yes, it kind of does look like they're attempting to encircle it, and from what we know, they probably are, because this area down here around Marinka and Krasnoyarivka is actually the southernmost end of this offensive, from what we can tell. So they probably are trying to encircle this at the moment. We don't really know how successful they'll be at that, though. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the last super chat of the night.
And this one goes to Jaya Turner, who puts in a 2 and says, hit the like, that's an order, LSA.
Hey, and hit that like button. That is an order from, not from LSA Sergeant Pittman tonight, but from Jaya Turner. And thank you for carrying on that tradition. We actually got up to 3,400 likes, which is pretty impressive. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we have reached the end of our super chats tonight. And so now we're going to be moving into the live chats proper. We're going to be addressing the Morse code decoders, 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
And tonight, the Morse code was solved by Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, and her royal fluffiness. They said the LSA Morse code decipher says Russian forces don't like to get beaten a whole lot, but neither does North Korean generals. And LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and that's something that neither the Russians nor the North Korean generals get a lot of, because y'all got that dead on the nail on day 923 of the war. Absolutely crazy. And I gotta say, congratulations to y'all on getting that Morse code message correct again. And with that, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Ambrester, who says, will Ukraine take Kursk city itself?
I highly doubt it at this point. They probably don't have the force number, and also they probably will not be able to get the offensive advantage needed to be able to advance like that again. So I highly doubt it. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Steve McKinnon, who says, why has there suddenly been a reduction in general net news on the war?
I wouldn't really know how to explain that, to be entirely honest with you. Probably because the news is slow, really, right now. Like, you know, we are able to get people in to watch the news, but there isn't really a lot going on over the past few days. I mean, there was like a major drone attack 72 hours ago, but that was on Sunday. And that's really been it over 72 hours. I mean, you know, there's been general fighting like there has been, but nothing that would really get people talking about it that much on a news circuit. You know, we just kind of cover it because we're a world news channel. And as far as world news is concerned, this is still the biggest thing going on a day-to-day basis. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one is going to go to And Pro, who says, what if China, Belarus, Iran, North Korea declare war on Ukraine? And will anyone then join Ukraine?
If they all declared war in Ukraine, we probably wouldn't join. America wouldn't join, but France might join. But they're really the only ones I could think of that would be the most uninhibited to join. Poland would probably be next, but not a lot of countries would join in Ukraine's defense, to be entirely honest. Most would probably just ramp up support, if anything. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream on day 923. I got to give a huge thanks to everyone once again for watching. 10,600 people were here at the peak, and over the entirety of the stream, about 67,000 people have watched. watched. We are entirely honored and greatly appreciative of every single one of y'all watching. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that like button. You know, really hit it. Like, I mean, slam that thing. Hit it like it owes you money. I mean, beat that thing, would you? I mean, really, like, just absolutely get a battery charge. I mean, whatever you would want. But beyond that, thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, good night to you all, and thank you all for another great stream tonight. Another night of news down in the books, a day 923. And with that, we'll see you all tomorrow, maybe for the short war video, if there's enough news to cover midday, but definitely tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next night of war news streaming, just like those ones. So be sure to join us. And also with that, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and of course, good night.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.